Hey gang, I am painting this morning in downtown Norfolk, Virginia. I'm participating this weekend, all weekend long, I'm participating in a Plein Air event, function. And most of the weekend I'm about 20 minutes right now from where most of this Plein Air event is happening. So I'm in downtown Norfolk because I like painting cityscapes. And they gave me permission. They said, yeah, that'd be fine. A cityscape. So here I am. Most of the rest of the weekend I'll be painting things like boats and marinas and stuff like that. Maritime, nautical stuff. Boats. But this morning I decided to, at least for this one half of this day, come and paint what I like to paint the most, evidently, which is cityscape. So here I am. Am I right in your way? Just about, aren't I? Let me try to move you just a little bit. Well, while I'm here, let me show you the view. So that's the, more or less, the scene that I'm painting at an upward angle. And I'm actually standing on a ledge about 2.5 feet above the sidewalk. So that's kind of a first, I think. I don't think I've ever done that exact thing before. I'm standing in a flower bed that doesn't have any flowers in it, I must add quickly. So you don't think I'm tromping around and destroying plants. Good morning. And again, for those of you who perhaps are new to watching me, this big purple swoosh here has just about nothing to do with the subject matter. The only relationship between that purple swoosh and the subject matter is that I try to make that initial mark contrary to the subject matter, opposite to the major swoosh. That is weird, isn't it? If you don't think that's weird, you're not paying attention. That's weird. Why do I do that? By the way, before I answer that question as to why I do that, let me tell you that I am doing this perspective right now with a great deal of sobriety. Because just last week, you might have seen me, I was doing a painting of a close-up of a big old schoolhouse. And my goodness, I screwed up. I just screwed up the perspective on that thing so bad. It's just downright embarrassing. I'm like slapping myself, saying, "What? What did I do? What was I thinking?" Some of you might have seen. I ran into one of my viewers yesterday, and I said to him, we were talking about. He's a painter. He's one of the artists here at this festival, and I said, "Yeah, man, I did a painting last week where I just screwed up the perspective." He said, "You mean that school?" Yeah, so he watched me paint it, and he said he was yelling at me, but he didn't yell a comment. So if you guys see me screw up like that, it's your job to tell me I'm screwing up, okay? You get that? Oh my goodness. So as I said, I'm drawing this with a painting with a great deal of sobriety. Not that drunkenness is normally one of my problems anyway, but anyway. I'm drawing, it's like, okay, come on now. We're not going to make a pattern out of this. I think the mistake that I made on that day, where it was actually 2 days where I screwed up the perspective, which is even more scary, is that I didn't back up from the thing. It was a big canvas, 36 by 60, and I don't think I backed up from it. Anyway, that's what I'm hoping was the problem. Dang, did I screw up? Man, I'm gonna go home and fix it. And yes, hopefully I'll broadcast my repair of that painting. That'll be embarrassing, but you know, better to be embarrassed. Oh, okay. So I was answering, why do I do a big purple swoosh? Well, it's purple because I expect the primary coloration of this painting to be warm yellow orange when I'm done. By the time I'm done, I expect this to be a largely warm yellow orange painting. Therefore, my swoosh is not only the opposite of the shape, it's also opposite of color. And I don't know if it's something I'm going to keep doing. I've been doing it for about the last 6 or 8 months or so. Maybe it's just a phase that I'm having. That's always possible, you know. My technique, like I hope yours, my technique is always evolving, always changing here and there, always improving. I might quickly add. So I don't know if this is something I'm going to do for a long time, or if it's just a phase I'm passing through. No idea. But I do the big, in this case, purple swoosh. I'm sort of playing mind games. I'm sort of playing tricks, mental tricks on myself. I'm telling myself, you are not painting a picture. And I like to pronounce the word improperly on purpose. You're not painting a picture. The real word is picture. You're not painting a picture. You're painting a painting. Since the goal of my underpainting process overall is to create a lot of chaos on the canvas, and that is certainly one way to create some chaos on the canvas, which we agree. And why do you create chaos on the canvas? Oh boy, okay, here we go. Well, years ago, not enough years ago, I wish I'd learned it decades ago, I discovered that the best painting happens when you're trying hard to do something else. Now, again, I don't mean the best painting happens when you're trying to change a flat tire or make a peanut butter and jam sandwich. I don't know. What I mean is, the best painting on the canvas happens when you're doing something else, and then something accidental happens, and you look at it and go, whoa, that's nice. I'm going to keep that. So in that sense, the best painting happens when you're trying hard to do something else in your painting. Bob Ross's best quote, best line was, he called it happy little accidents. That's his best, Bob Ross's best line as far as an artist goes. Some other people, Tom Jones says, the brush is smarter than you are, the paint is smarter than you are, let the paint is smarter than you are. So all of those statements are related. So the best painting happens, I'll go back to that one, when you're trying hard to do something else. In other words, the best painting does not happen when you're control freaking, when you're I hope that noise is not permanent. Surely not. Anyway, so if the best painting happens is an accident, if the best things that happen on your canvas are accidents, then why don't you just paint all accidents? Are you with me? It's the silly analogy I often use. If the black box always survives the plane crash, then why don't we all ride in the black box? Yuck, yuck, joke. I know there's an answer for it. I'm being funny, okay? Maybe not very funny. But it's that kind of thinking. If the best painting happens when you're by accident, then why not just paint all accidents? And that's a pretty good description of my underpainting. It's all accidents. Right now what I'm doing is not accidents. Right, what I'm doing right now is a pretty careful drawing and trying to get the perspective right, I might add. Smooshed these two buildings closer together, made the gap between the two buildings narrower than it actually is, and I think that's a good choice of composition sake. So did I answer the question? Why do I do the big purple swoosh? Because it's an accident. Because it's absolutely has nothing to do with the subject matter that I'm about to start painting, other than it's opposite to the subject matter I'm about to start painting. Okay, enough of that. I shut up to try to paint here for a little while. Remember that all of these marks that I'm making at this point in the painting process are wild guesses. I do not expect any of these. I do not count on any of these marks being correct. Unlike an amateur wannabe, not quite so mature painter, forgive me, trying to come up with a term that's not offensive, but painters that aren't that good, they do not paint this way. They make marks and then die on that hill. they swear by they don't realize they're doing it, but they make marks and then trust them. I see it all the time in the course of their painting process. They make marks, drawing marks like this, and then believe them, then think they're correct, which is really dumb. If I'm not smart enough, I'm not a good enough drawer to get all my marks perfect the first time, then probably most students aren't either. So everything I'm doing right now is just kind of a wild guess, and I expect most of these marks to shift in the course of the day. Again, I'm in downtown Norfolk, Virginia. I'm going to put people over here. There's no people right now, but there will be later. There's a waiter, a waitress. That's people eating. Tables. It's actually sitting at a bar for the restaurant. It's not bar. It's the house. You don't need to know all that. But while I'm doing some people, we go ahead and a man walked by right at the moment I was thinking about what was he doing? Well, of course, he was doing like all human beings on the planet. He was looking at his phone. You just draw all the incidental people in your paintings these days. If you want them to look realistic, just have them looking at their phone. That's funny. Okay, and did I show you? I did show you the view. Let me show it to you. So basically, that's what I'm painting, a high view of that. And one of the things that drew me to this view. Hey guys.
How you doing?
Very good. One of the things that drew me to this view actually is the branches that are overhead. So I definitely want all this stuff up there is going to be messed up by branches and leaves and so forth. Okay, that's probably a good place for me to take a little break. I'll be back in a little while. I hope my sound is okay. Guys, if my sound is bad, please tell me and I'll see what I can do to fix it. And thanks for watching. I'll be back probably in the next 20 minutes or so, maybe less. Hey Kay, sorry I missed your comment earlier. Good night to you. Thanks for watching from Sydney. Yeah, it's late at night over there. So since we last spoke, I have done warm glazes, yellow, orange, red, yellow down here, and then I did some drawing in pencil. So I'm ready to do my first layer of opaque white, which is always one of my favorite stages of the process. I think it's because, first of all, because I see my subject matter through a different lens. When I start looking for light stuff, now please make sure you understand that I'm not looking for things that are white, you understand, even though I'm using white paint. I'm using for things that are light in value. I'm painting them white. I'm painting it with white paint at the moment. And so I enjoy the fact that I am now seeing the subject matter through a different lens in my eyes, so to speak.
Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. And the other reason I enjoy this first layer of white so much is because it's really the first stage of the painting process where I begin the shift from toward serious composition issues. Composition, you understand, the subject of composition, which is huge. I need to back up. The composition, of course, is one of the most important aspects of the painting. More important than what? Composition has to do, and this is important, and there's all kinds of things I never heard anybody teach. I'm sure I went to the wrong school because I wanted to learn things, but it was a typical university college art department. Typical. They were not trying to teach us how to paint beautiful paintings. My professors were lost as pieces, I now realize. They didn't know what the heck they were doing, so how could they teach us what we were doing? Composition has to do with values. Let me clarify. Composition is a subcategory of large light and dark shapes. That's what composition is. Composition does not really have much to do with little bitty skinny lines. It doesn't really have that much to do with color. It can, but normally it has to do with the large and small color zones in your painting. I mean value zones. Large, let's say it right, it has to do with the large, not small, it has to do with the large value zones of your painting. The large light and dark shapes. That is what composition is talking about. So I like getting to this stage of the painting process because it gets me addressing that directly. There are a bunch of details in this scene. I'm trying to decide whether I want to include them or not. Things like, I'm going to go ahead and paint one right now, a sign here that means no left turn. Do you include no left turn signs in your cityscape? I'll tell you the way to answer that question is this. So you're tromping around. One of the hardest parts of plein air painting is deciding where to set up, what to paint. So you're driving or walking, maybe shooting, maybe taking pictures with your phone, maybe looking at things through a composition finder, all different tricks for trying to decide what to paint. So you're walking around and finally you pick something because you think that something in this scene makes you happy. Something in the scene makes you feel like, oh, this might be a good picture here. Are you with me? Just something. You're not sure what. Okay, so once you get set up and you start painting, in my case, I have to decide, okay, is this no parking, no left turn and no parking on a lamppost? I mean, in a way, this is not very romantic. You understand? This is not like horse and buggy. Thomas Kincaid would not include no left turn sign in his painting, and neither would G. Harvey. You understand? But I'm trying to decide whether I want to include such things. I can eliminate that later if I decide I don't like it. But normally you look at the scene and I look at it and go, was that element, was that even a little tiny bit of what made me feel like this was a pleasant scene? And believe it or not, I'm going to say that in this case, yes, it was. It was part of the visual mess, part of the visual complexity, cityness. Right? I think that makes sense to you. This is a painting very much about cityness, the texture of a city, and a sign like that is, that's definitely part of the texture of a city. So anyway, at the moment I'm going to paint it in. I can change my mind later if I so choose. That's the kind of thing you have to think about. Was that little crazy thing right there? Same thing with cars, pedestrians, fire hydrants. Some places in the world I think they're called fire plugs. Right there's one. So at the moment I'm inclined to say yes, all those things are part of what drew me to this scene. Now, what really drew me to this scene is light. Of course. You know that. Play of light. Speaking of which, got another phone over here. that I used to take pictures with, and the light's going to change drastically in the next little while, as you well know, and I won't be able to remember what the scene looked like, so I take pictures to help me remember the lighting as it is right now. I'm taking pictures using an app called Pro HDR. Love this app. Very good. Okay. I got it stashed away. Let me show you the scene again. A little bit about what is attractive. It's the shady side of that building, which in a little while that's going to have sun on it. So I need to lock in. I need to make sure I don't chase the sun. That I don't chase the change of light. I like the fact that the bottom half of this building is in shade and the top is in light, and all of this building is in sunlight, and the shaft of light coming across the street. See, I'm already, in my mind, I'm already beginning to reflect that and feel that. The shaft of light. In fact, I've never said this before. It dawns on me as I say it. The phrase shaft of light is a really, really good label, good name, good thing to look for in paintings. No, not a good thing to look for. Good thing to create in your paintings. Now, in this case, I'm lucky, once again, because this shaft of light actually exists. If I were out here, now the reason there's a shaft of light is because it's because there are big buildings here. This is a morning, right? That way is east. My canvas is pointed north. That way is east. And the reason there's a shaft of light is because the sun's coming up the street between these tall buildings. Of course, this kind of thing happens all the time in cities. But even if these buildings weren't here, are you with me? Even if these buildings behind me weren't here creating this shadow, I would be wise, clever, smart if I would make this kind of thing happen, even if it weren't here. Create, so I'm going to say this, here's my statement of the morning. Create shafts of light in your paintings, even where they don't exist. Where they don't. I'm sure I'll be doing this later this weekend because I've already scouted out a little bit of where I think I'm going to paint later this weekend, and it's a bunch of marinas and boats and boatyards. You know, it's a real. I'm in Norfolk, Virginia. I don't think I'm going to paint any battleships, even though I'm sure a really good artist could make a beautiful painting out of a big gray wall of a battleship. Doesn't call to me, so I'm probably not going to do that. But most of the scenes that I'm going to paint the rest of this week are bathed in sunlight, awash in sunlight, completely saturated with wide, unbroken sunlight. And I'm already in my mind, I'm already going, okay, if I do that marina, which is a dock with yachts up against it, if I'm going to paint that marina, I'm going to invent clouds or buildings or something that are blocking the sun. So I'm going to create shafts of light. That's my word of the day right there. Shafts of light. Never used that term exactly that way before. Okay, now I'm putting blue, a couple different blues on my brushes. Go ahead and do some of what I just talked about a minute ago. Making sure that the shady side, and for some reason the blue out here this morning seems shifted slightly toward daylight, in other words, usually the blues that I do are purplish toward the purplish end of the spectrum, that is ultramarine blue. But it seems, for some reason, fairly greenish this morning. I'm going to follow what I'm seeing, what I'm sensing with my eyes. Do it in a phthalo blue instead of a purplish blue. I do not want those drips. I like drips, by the way. I like drips a lot, but those drips right there, I did not like those. Okay, so you can see, I hope you can see already, the composition is beginning to take shape. I did put some purple on right then. Composition, again, refers to the major light and dark areas in a painting. Not the small stuff, not so much the color. Now, even though I just put blue here, there's a lot of secondary light, hitting this side of this building. The building's in shade, but it's got sunlight bouncing off this side of the building onto the shady side. Does that make sense? And I do want to try to reflect that reflection. That's what I'm saying. Okay, time to do some more drawing. A little while ago I talked about not trusting the marks, your first marks, and boy, it's a good thing I didn't, because in the course of doing my pencil drawing, I made a number of changes, especially to this building right here. And I'm going to go ahead and draw this building now for the third time and try to get some accuracy nailed down. I think, now for the last 6-7 years, I have been on a conscious quest in my painting.
Pretty neat, man.
Thank you.
I've been watching it since it started.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Good. I'll be here a good while.
Yeah.
I've been on a conscious quest for my paintings to be messier and more accurate. Both more messy and more accurate. I've talked about this often. Recently, I have developed some slightly different terminology. Same exact goal, slightly different terminology in this way, and I'm stating it in my mind in the negative, that impressionistic paintings does not equal, is not sloppy drawing. That's why that snafu, that silly mistake I made last week with the perspective on that school was so embarrassing. So come on, I know better than to do that. And again, I'm trying to figure out why did I make such a big mistake. I think it's because I didn't back up from the painting often enough. Both days when I was painting, the nose was right up in it. I didn't back up enough. So I try not to make that. Back up a couple times today. Now I can continue to do that. So let me repeat that though. Abstraction or impressionism does not equal sloppy drawing. And sad to say, for most art students, it in fact does equal sloppy drawing. The reason they paint impressionistic paintings is because they lack the chops, to use that term. By the way, for all you know, that's actually a musical term. They lack the chop that is spilled out into the rest of the culture. They lack the chops to do realism. So they say, well, I can't do realism, so I'll just do impressionism. Wrong. Yes, and again, I think I'm addressing here mostly young art students. Please do develop the chops. Learn how to do realism. learn how to paint realistic stuff. And then after you kind of nail that down, which is never nailed it down, it's a never-ending quest. But once you're good at realism, then you add impressionistic stuff, impressionistic marks to your realistic painting, not the other way around. Now, for some of you who are older than that, too late. Whatever. Okay, no matter how old you are, though, you always continue the quest of learning to draw better. And how do you learn to draw better? By drawing. How do you learn to paint more realistic? By drawing. And the sketchbook and the quick sketches is the key to learning how to draw better. If you followed me this past week at all, the last couple weeks, you've seen me doing a number of illustration jobs in which I was doing human anatomy, illustration jobs of drawings of people. And how do I know how to draw people? Because I practice drawing people. Practice, not past tense. I continue to practice drawing people. Continue to practice learning how to draw cars, which my heart is not in drawing cars. When I was a kid, I loved paying attention to. I still remember the 1966 Thunderbird. I know what that looks like. That's about the last time I cared about cars. was in the late 60s. But anyway, because I do cityscapes, I have to learn how to draw cars. Dang, I don't want to draw cars. Yeah, but if you're going to do convincing cityscapes, you better learn how to do them. In fact, if you go back and look at my paintings of the last 3 years, you can see a progress. You can see at what point. Well, if you can tell when I painted the paintings, I guess you can't really tell, but I can tell at what point I really tried to start getting serious painting automobiles in my cityscape, because I realized, I said to myself, if I'm going to do all these cityscapes, I'm going to have to get better at painting cars. And I wasn't excited about that. You understand? I'm excited about doing good paintings, but it's not like I'm excited about painting human beings, because that is the sine qua non, without which nothing. If you don't have human beings, you don't have anything. But I'm not that thrilled about cars. So, but that's discipline. I had to force myself. Sometimes I go out and I just do gesture drawings of cars, trucks, vehicles. That's right. Okay, the point being, how do you get better? By drawing, by sketching. Okay, I think most of my drawing issues, let me step back. Here's one good way to put it, in a way. In the serious, medium serious world of painting, you don't get credit for getting the drawing right. It is assumed that your drawing is going to be correct. What you get is vetoed. What you get is eliminated, so to speak, for drawing mistakes. Again, I made a big honking drawing mistake just the other day in a big painting. At least I caught it. I've still got the painting. I didn't. So, okay, I'll give myself that much credit. At least I caught it. And then I took it to my painters group, and sure enough, they caught it with me. They said, something's wrong. And I went, shut up. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear the truth. I don't want you to tell me the perspective's off. Shut up. but they were good friends, and they told me the truth. They said, nah, that's really noticeable. Oh, crap. I said to myself. Okay, just about time for another break. Give you guys a break. Let the people in Sydney go to bed. Is the composition working? That's the question. Oh, you know, I'm gonna do one more thing before I leave you though. During the time that I've been painting here, the sun is coming down further on that building across the street, and it's not too late for me to make a change there. I believe that is a slightly better composition. So I'm actually going to go slightly out of order here, and I'm going to bring the sun. Now, this is what you call chasing the sun when you're plein air painting. This is against the rules. Don't chase the sun. You have to make up your mind and stand your ground. Don't keep changing the painting as the lighting in the scene keeps changing. But here I'm breaking the rule. You understand? But I think it's yeah. That's better. I think I can get away with it for one thing. Okay, break time. Thanks guys for watching. Leave comments if I missed your chat. I'm sorry about that. I'll try to catch it when I can. If I didn't see your chat, please leave a comment. I'll be back in a while. Hey gang, welcome back. Welcome back, me. Hey Mark, good to hear from you, my friend. Sorry I missed that comment earlier. Hope you're on right now. I can't remember what I did during that little break. Not too much. I did some messy green stuff up here. It wasn't supposed to be messy, but the white paint on top of which I was painting was still wet, so that made some mud. But no big deal. I will clean up the mud in subsequent layers. By the way, if you're troubled by mud or don't know what mud is, I encourage you to do a search in YouTube for Dan Nelson mud, and I've got a video where I explain. Forgive me, but I think better than anybody I've ever heard. I'm so dang humble. Anyway, it's true. Better than anybody I've heard of what mud is and how to avoid it. Good news is when I stood back and took a break, took a look at my painting, I discovered I was closer to being finished with the acrylic stage than I had thought. Closer to being done than I had thought. So that's always nice when that happens. You sort of have in the back of your mind how much longer you're going to be doing this or that, and all of a sudden you go, oh wait, no, I'm almost done. It's a nice thing to have. So I'm nearly finished. I'm thinking that what I'm doing right now is my last layer of white. Beautiful town you have here. Thank you for your work. So I'll switch to oil. There are a couple of things I want to point out to you while I'm in this stage. Especially if you saw me at the beginning of this painting today, you saw that big purple swoop I made, right? Well, the darkest part of it up here is only peeking through a little bit, but I like it. See this purple coming through? And then let me try to put this again the best way I can. I feel like I'm not smart enough to paint good. I'm not being humble here. Lest you think I accidentally slipped into some selfie-facing humility. No. I don't think anybody's smart enough to paint good. Except Rembrandt. Okay, Rembrandt's smart enough to paint good. Anyway, let me continue. What I mean is, I'm not smart enough to paint really good. As my grandchildren like to. They like to just stack up the adjective. They'll sit there and say this adjective for 3 minutes straight. Way across. Anyway, I don't think I'm really good. But I am good enough, I am smart enough to recognize some good painting when I see it. Does that make sense to you? I don't think I'm smart enough to paint really well. But I am smart enough to, in the editing phase, to go, ooh, wait a minute, that looks nice. So this little bit right up here is a great example of that. I'm not smart enough to think, Mark Ollie, I should put some purple up there in that sky. Because when I look at my subject matter over there, hang on. You see it right up there? I don't really see any purple. Being literal about it. I'm not talking about like through artist's eyes. No, there's no purple up there. But look, in my painting, there's purple up there. And guess what? Now that I see it, in other words, I'm not smart enough to put purple up there, but now that I see it, I go, golly, that is brilliant. I love it. Who was ever smart enough to put purple up there? Well, not me. I'm not smart enough. I didn't go, I bet it's going to look really good with some purple up there. I did not do that. You understand? And if you don't know what I mean, go back and, again, look at the beginning of my painting process. All I did is make a mess. In this case, I made a mess with purple. That's why there's purple up there. It looks great. Not smart enough to do that, but now that it's up there, I'm smart enough to go, oh, wait a minute. Dang, that looks wonderful. Are you with me? Now, while I'm on the subject, let me continue. This area right in here. Here's this. I think you can see this. Do you see that pale lavender stripe right there? And another one right here? Again, that's all part of that initial purple X. And again, there's a little bit more that's showing right here. All those things are complete accidents. If the best painting happens by accident, then duh, paint all accidents, of course, until the last layer, until the last stage, when you're editing out all your accidents. So I just wanted you to see that. It would be a real mistake for me to eliminate some of those things that happened, quite by accident. You know what I mean by accident. So in a way, my painting process is I create an environment where accidents like that will happen. Does that make sense? Another way to put that same thing is in the underpainting stages, and everything I'm doing right now, all of this is underpainting. Everything's underpainting to the last layer. So 90% of my painting process is underpainting. Only the last 10% is overpainting. I don't know if that's a word, but we use it around here. By the way, here's where I made my perspective mistakes last week, was when I was doing little tiny details in windows, and I got the mullions lined up the wrong way. So try not to do that today. Okay, one other thing I want you to see while I'm still at this point in the painting process. By the way, I should take a break here in just a minute and talk about composition, why, if this composition is working, why it's working. But before I do that, do you remember I talk often about slapping down a drawing, slapping down a line, a guess, your first guess as to where something goes, and then not trusting it, not relying on it, not depending on it, not believing that those marks are correct, so that you stay flexible, very willing to quickly modify those lines. So here's a classic example. Thank you. It is a little bit windy, not too bad. And I've got a big chunk. Let me zoom in here to, this area right here. at one point, I thought that it's actually these windows. I had them down here. So do you see these blue squarish shapes? I thought at one point that's where these windows went. Later on, in a later stage of the drawing, went, oh my goodness, no, that's way wrong. I missed a whole. So these windows go here, and these blue windows go way up here. Are you with me? Here's what I want you to see. So what do I do with those mistakes, with those erroneous marks? The question is, what do I do about them? Well, I'll tell you what most students do about them. They go, you recognize that just kind of one cuss fits all type language, you know? That's what most students do. They sort of cuss themselves out. They get upset. They get unhappy. They feel stupid. And first of all, don't feel stupid. Everybody does that kind of stuff. If you caught your mistake, that's good enough, okay? And then most students try to obliterate that mistake because they're embarrassed by a mistake like that. And that's an impulse that is deadly. Do not go in and try to correct or erase, cover over, quote unquote, mistakes. Just leave them there, because in fact in the final painting you'll still be able to see a little bit of those blue marks. Now I'm going to cover them up somewhat. I'm going to cover them up a little bit, but not very much, just a little bit. And the funny part is, the ironic part is that those erroneous marks, these mistakes right here, will end up making my painting better. And that, man, if you get that, the mistakes you make create texture, create energy that you and me as painters, we are not smart enough to create those kind of marks, but we're smart enough to recognize they're good, you know, once we see them up there. And by the way, while I'm doing all this talking at the moment, you might notice I'm doing something slightly unusual, and that is I'm painting some opaque color in the acrylic stage. Opaque blue. I mixed white with my blue, and that's unusual. The great majority of my acrylic underpainting stage is either transparent color or white. But every once in a while it serves me well to do a little bit of local color in the acrylic stage. So that's what I'm doing right now. Just a little bit. Okay? By the way, I just mixed up some pale green. While I'm on the subject of local color, mixed up some pale green and doing just a little bit of that. Now I'm going to mix up some pale yellow green. And light is the key thing that I'm doing right here is I'm doing light colors. Nope, I think I'm good enough. Okay, acrylics are finished. I'm going to clean up. I'm going to pause you guys for a little while this dries for a few minutes. I'll close up all my acrylics. I got my oil palette out here. Let me tell you, when is it time to go to oils? Again, using my technique, if you're following me, when do you go to oils? The answer is when the drawing is close. You've got everything pretty close to where you want it. Number one, when the drawing is close. Number two, when the values are close. Light, mid-tone, dark. Okay? Number three, when the colors are close. Not exact, but close. Warm, cool purple, blue, green. Okay, so that's when you go to oils. And the last layer in oils is all, and the last layer in acrylics is almost always white. Now in this case I cheated because I was doing white, then I switched to some pale opaque colors. So that's unusual, but normally the very last thing I do is white. In this case I did white and light. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll be back in just a few minutes when I start. Missed a comment there, sorry. Something about a question. Anyway, I'm back. Thanks for coming and joining me. So I did oil glaze. Don't want to be confusing. I call it a glaze, but it can have as many different colors as you want in that glaze. So you could call it oil glazes as well. In this case, I did mostly warm yellow, warm orange yellow over the whole thing, and then some blue and now some purple violet here and here. When I was first getting into this technique, which I just stumbled on myself, I didn't learn from somebody else. It's a long story. I've told it before. I can tell it today how I stumbled on this technique of acrylic underneath, transparent layers of transparent acrylic, followed by layers of transparent oil, finished by little bits of opaque oil. How I stumbled on that. But in the early stages, like 10, 12 years ago, I used to use a lot of purple because in the world of transparent color, purple or violet is the darkest color. So I used a lot of purple just to get dark. I still am doing that right now. I still do it, but I not quite as much maybe as I used to. Okay, this is a good time. Let me clean these brushes real quickly. This is a good moment for me to pause and point out a couple things. One is I did something today that I don't believe I've ever done. So this might be the start of something new, might be a little breakthrough. And again, I think that's how most good painting habits, painting processes, that's how they happen, by accident. You're just painting, you're doing your normal thing, your normal step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all of a sudden you go, wonder what would happen if I did blank. So a little while ago I did blank. I'd already cleaned up all my acrylics. I'd already put them all away, dumped out my water, etc. And I saw this light area down here and said, you know what? I bet that would look better if I made that really fuzzy, if I added some glow. I think you can see that here. So I picked up a brush this size, I dipped it back, opened up my white acrylic back up, and scumbled glow here, and then up here. And doggone, it's like, make a difference. Like, whoa. I think I kind of like that. I think that right now, too. So, wow, maybe a new discovery. Now, I'm probably done with my chip. My favorite brushes in the world are these cheap chip brushes. I don't know why they're called chip brushes. Somebody suggested it's because they were used for wiping wood chips off machinery. I don't know if that's true or not. Love them. Favorite brushes, as you can probably tell by watching. I use them more than anything. The only thing I'm going to use probably from this point on is the handle of one of them for scratching. Because they're also, both ends of the brush are really good. Let's talk about composition, and I want to talk about composition out loud with you guys for just a minute to make sure I'm okay. 4 categories of composition. Number 1, learn the law of thirds, and then break it, like push it a little bit. Don't lock in to the law of thirds or it gets boring. So I'm pretty good here. There's a major horizon. By the way, I could talk. This is painting is good, Isaiah. A horizon, you've heard that, is made up of several things. It's There's a technical, literal horizon, which is eye level. And by the way, again, just to show you, I'm standing up here today on about 2 feet above the sidewalk, which gives me a slightly different angle, which I'm enjoying quite a bit. So I'm raised up. So that my literal eye level is here, very dangerously close to the center of the canvas, right? But horizon is not, that's the literal eye level horizon. That's the literal scientific perspective is right there. But because I'm above the street, I'm looking down. This major line here, the curve on the far side of the street, again, there's the view that I'm painting, but not this lighting anymore. Not this light. I'm painting the lighting that existed about 45 minutes or an hour ago. So my horizon, the impression of a horizon is here, so I'm okay. This is pretty close to 1/3, a little bit off, that's good. A little bit off is good. Okay, 4 rules of composition. Number 1, learn the law of thirds, then tweak it. Don't lock into the law of thirds most of the time. Number 2 this is in order of complexity. The law of thirds is the simplest. Number 2 is the major light or dark shapes in your painting should be identifiable with one word. I used to say one simple sentence, then I realized, oh no, it's really one shape. Okay, so I'm looking at my painting. Let me back up a little bit so you can see the whole painting. And I'm going to back up a little bit. Either the light or the dark shapes can be described with one word. And you know what? In this painting, they can't. Because I have an L here. That's good. I have an L here and an apostrophe here. But those are 2 separate light shapes, which might be a weakness in my composition. Okay, so the light shape doesn't cohese as a unit. Let's try the dark shape. Well, the dark shape is also a large L shape here. Are you with me? But I've got a separate dark shape, which is a vertical over here. So my dark shapes don't cohese, are not a unit either. Which again, might be an indication of a weak composition. So I'm scratching my chin here. Let me just give you the principle again, though. A good composition is either the major light or dark shape, singular, can be described in a single word. This painting doesn't pass muster in that regard. Okay, let's go to principle number 3, which I call Mikey's rule, simply because I learned it from my buddy Mike Rooney. He learned it from somebody else, but doesn't remember who. I'm sure, John Carlson or somebody like that taught it. It is 3 values: light, medium, and dark. 2 of the 3 need to be contiguous, touching. 1 of the 3 can be independent. Okay, so in this case, there's light, medium, and dark. My lights clearly are not contiguous because I have big light area here and big light area. So 2 of the 3 that means either my mids or both my mids and my darks need to connect, and they don't. Let me stand back and look at this again. So according to law number 2, it's not a good composition. According to law number 3, it's not a good composition. Now, there are exceptions to the rule, of course, but you grab those pretty slowly, carefully. Category number 4, composition number 4, by the way, is Edgar Payne, P-A-Y-N-E, father of California School of Plein Air Painting, wrote a book, The Composition of Outdoor Painting, and in that he has a list of 12 or 13, and you can find this on my Facebook, by the way, Facebook.com/Danny Artman. I post it periodically, his 12 design stems. He says, and he's a brilliant painter, so you don't ignore him, ignore him at your peril. He says all the good compositions in the world, all the good composition in the world can be boiled down to one of these 12 or 13, I don't remember, basic design stems. I took his and modified them and made an acrostic out of it, and the acrostic is NFL teams are too XL, extra large. NFL teams are, the word R is supplied. NFLTEAMSTOOXL. So however many letters that is. Anyway, that's enough for now. So let me go back to, and by the way, this would be a right angle. And Edgar Payne, he would call this a right angle, probably a good composition. But before I said I was done with these chip brushes, now I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to try something. It's pretty inexpensive test. That is, if it doesn't work, I can undo it and wipe it off pretty easy. So I'm going to pick up some ultramarine. By the way, the medium that I'm using, as always for my oil painting, is liquid original, and there it is on my palette. It's a gel. It stays put. I love gel mediums. I have a cup. I don't like cups. Okay, so right at the moment I'm mixing up brown, violet. I mean blue, violet, and yes, a little bit of brown because I just want some dark bluish stuff. Here's what I'm going to try. This is thinking about modifying my composition by cutting off this light down here. Instead of having it come all the way to the corner of that thing, get another brush that's a little bit cleaner. We change the color here slightly, introduce some phthalo to that mixture. Okay, now do you see what I'm doing? What I'm doing is, let's go to Mikey's rule for a minute. He says 2 of the 3 need to be contiguous. So what I've done now is connected. I've made a narrow isthmus of darkness down here. According to that rule, I just made the composition better. Hang on just a second. I'm going to stand back and look at this and ask myself, you know what? I mean, I sort of liked that shaft of light coming in, right? You can still have it coming in. Let me erase a little bit of it. They can come back this way, as long as I don't cut these two completely off. Now let me stand back. There you go. There you go. Better composition. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. There's a case where a little bit of sort of academic, learning, know what the rules are, probably made me create a better painting. Yep. I thought I liked this light coming all the way across the bottom of the canvas, but in so doing, I violated, one of the rules, and all the rules can be broken. Don't get me wrong. All the rules can be broken, but you better know what you're doing when you break them. Otherwise, you're probably just screwing up. And also now suddenly this other thing is happening where I've got a little bit of mid-tone trickling right here, coming across the street and here, which would connect my mid-tones. Wow, it's amazing what a change just that little bit made. Let me describe now. So composition rule number 2, the major light or dark shapes can be described in one word. I now basically I can do that. The dark shape is a wide capital U. The dark shape goes like this. Are you with me? It doesn't go quite to the top here, like that, which is also, ironically, I'm not sure that's the right word, but it's also a hint of Edgar Payne's Steelyard. High shape, horizontal, low shape. High, low. Okay? That always makes me feel good. I have now turned all of this into a mid-tone, which is correct. That is a mid-tone. Again, we're still seeing a little bit of the effect over here that the shady side of that building, which is about to get full sun, then I won't be able to look at this at all. I'll look at my phone when I need reference. But that shady side is getting a whole bunch of bounced sunlight off the backside of this building that we can't see. Do you understand? So, yes, so now this is making more sense. Dark, midtone, and midtone, midtone, midtone. All my midtones are contiguous. This is Mikey's rule. Compositional rule number 3. 3 values. Light, medium, and dark. 2 of the 3 need to be contiguous. The lights are separate, but the midtones are touching, and the dark tones. Now that I've made an isthmus, a skinny bit of dark down here, and golly, if it doesn't make a better painting. Wow, I'm a little bit amazed at that. Now my focal point is even more attractive to our eyes. I tell you, I'm a little bit astounded myself as to how much that helps my painting. Okay, now, what's next? So I've just finished the glazing process. As you probably know, if you follow me much, I have a process. I have a step 1, 2, 3, ABC that I do, so to speak, with each painting. Although, as I say, you want to stay in the donut of creativity. If you follow any process too slavishly, you're in the hole of the donut. You don't want to be in the hole, you want to be in the dough of the donut. If you follow any step, any process, ABC 1 to 3, too strictly, you're not creative enough. Conversely, if you do crazy things, which all of us did when we were young, I mean artistically, you miss the donut because you're too outside the box. Today's a good example. This right here, when I fuzzed this in, that's a new thing, new step for me. I don't know if it'll stick, don't know if it'll become a permanent part of my repertoire, although I sure do like what it did here. So I'm going to try to remember to do that in the future, see if it grows on me. Okay, so next step for me is drawing. Either draw with pencil, which, as you know, is completely unconventional, but it's what I've done for the last 2 years, and I find I still like it. Either draw with pencil or draw with brushes. And which one of those, and if I draw with brushes, it's dark, transparent colors. And sometimes I do one, and sometimes I do the other. There is no, so to speak, rhyme or reason. It's purely intuitive. Which do I feel like the painting calls for? I know. This time I know what the answer is. And the answer is because there's still quite a bit of pencil showing from the... I do pencil typically twice. Once in the acrylic stage, once in the oil stage. But a lot of the early pencils still showing. So, no, it's not drawn with pencils. It's not what's I'm going to do next. It's going to be drawing with brushes. So down here is my pile of liquid medium that makes the paint transparent, makes it flow, makes it dry fast, and is glossy. I like all 3 of those properties. I like glossiness, I like fast dry, and of course I like flow. Okay, so I've dipped my brushes in that. And now I draw again. So how many times have I drawn this scene already? I did a big purple X that I did, and I drew with blue purple, drew once with pencils, drew again with brushes, drew again with white. So I've drawn it at least 4 times. This would be the 5th time I'm going to draw this. And every time I draw it, I'm editing. Does that make sense to you? I don't know how many of you are authors, writers, but even if you're not, you can probably relate to this, especially any writing job like that's done by committee. You know, the board has to put together, in the corporate world, has to put together a report. The first person who does the first rough draft has the hardest writing job. Everybody that comes, whether it's the same person or somebody else, the editing job is slightly easier than the first rough draft. As a first rough draft, there's no guardrails. You're just flying, so to speak, by the seat of your pants, and you don't know if you're writing good stuff or bad, so to speak. But when you come back and edit it, it's not as hard because you're comparing. Same thing with drawing, doing your drawing iteratively. Iterative. I like that word. If you do your drawing iteratively, that means iterative. To iterate means to start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. So iterative drawing is what I mean is you draw for a while, then you quit and do something else, then you come back and draw again for a while, and then quit, and then come back and draw again for a while, and then quit. That's iterative. That's what the word I'm using at the moment to describe this drawing process. It's start, stop, start, stop.
Nice.
Thank you. And the fact is, iterative drawing is much, much easier than the opposite of that is trying to get it all correct the first time. That's what I'm saying is the dumb way to do it. Do not try to get everything correct the first time. Just draw something and then edit, edit, edit. So this is the 5th time, not counting my washes or glazes or whatever, which really also technically count as drawing, but not counting that. This is the 5th time that I have drawn this scene, and I've got at least 1, 2, 3 more to go. So when I'm done, I'll have drawn it 8 times, and my thinking is, by the time you've drawn something 8 times, every time editing, making corrections, you're probably pretty close, or you can get, again, my screw up of last week looms ever before me, to my undying shame. But by the time you draw it 5 or 6 or 7 times, hopefully, you work out all the stupid mistakes. Oh my goodness. Those of you who weren't with me earlier, go back and see what I was talking about, a mistake I made in a painting last week. A perspective drawing mistake. Even though I drew the thing 7 times. By the way, this is the 3rd time I've drawn these people crossing the street. The first time I made them too tall, the second time I made them too short. Now I'm making them right in between. Great example. Yeah, you can see that. Enough, I guess. Of course, at every stage of the painting process, making interesting marks is even more important than accurate marks. People will put up with some degrees of inaccuracy if the marks are beautiful. That's a dangerous statement. I'm afraid you, like me, are tempted to take that as an excuse for sloppy drawing. That's really not correct. But the main point is the marks that I'm making at every point, especially, of course, this point. My paramount concern is that my marks be pleasant, interesting. And the manner in which I move, the way that I move my hands and my brushes is key. That's what makes the marks interesting, is the way I move. And yes, I do encourage you, unless you're better than I am, which is very possible, take some influence from me. Take a little bit from me. Learn to move. What I find it pretty amazing is that all good artists throughout much of history, all the history we can see, I have it. This is not going back very far, but I have in my studio back at home what can be really described as an antique book. A book published in the early 1920s, I believe. and it's a drawing book. It's kind of like a how-to draw, and it's all old and yellow and falling apart, kind of. But it shows a bunch of pencil drawings of some artists in the early 20s. And what surprises me about this book, when I first saw it, when I picked it up, I don't remember where I got it. When I first picked it up, I was like, dang, these guys draw, forgive me, that sounds arrogant, but these guys draw just like me. Or I should say better, these guys draw the way I aspire to draw. The way, the marks, the kinds of marks they make. Now, I must add that through much of the art education of the 20th century, many of the art movements of the 20th century were not aimed at beauty at all, and were in fact aimed at not creating beauty, but creating social statements. I'm assuming you know that. That's the topic of one of my other books that I'm writing. That I hope I can get back to in the not too distant future. So don't be confused by much of the art of the 20th century. And if you got an art degree in the 20th century, by all means, your professors, unless they were radically countercultural, if they followed the crowd, which ironically means they are not creative, they are sheep. But 99.9% of professors were in fact sheep. They didn't teach you how to make good marks. They were trying to teach you how to make socio-political statements. I'm sorry, I get on that maybe too often, but part of the reason I do is I don't want you guys, students, to be confused. Like, you hear me talking about all these rules and principles, and then you go to your local art museum and go, what? No, that's wrong. None of this stuff. Right. There's a reason for that. If you ever walk through, I'm talking about your municipal art museum, your state, the state of North Carolina is where I live, art museum. And if you're like my wife, who is not an artist at all, but she walks through and she literally gets angry because she feels like she's being preached at. The reason is she is being preached at, because that is the 20th century was not about beauty, it was about preaching. And so I contend if they, another word for that is art is communication. That sounds like so innocent. Art is communication, isn't it? Nope. If the artist conceives himself as primarily as a communicator, then he or she is no longer an artist. He is bound by honesty to admit he or she is a communicator. And you can say communicating, but I'm communicating by art. Yep, what is your objective? Is it to art or is it to communicate? Clearly, by their own confession, their goal is to communicate. Therefore, they are not artists, they are communicators. My dear wife came out of the art museum, she was almost livid. Because the only way to express this is to use the coarsest language. When you walk through an art museum, forgive me, I don't normally talk this way. When you walk through an art museum, and the typical modern art museum, a typical art museum of modern art, you are being effed with. Forgive me, but I really don't know of an English way to put it. You're being screwed. You're being screwed over. You're being preached at. And if you feel like you're being preached at, it's because you're sensitive and you are being preached at. Whew! Okay, I'm going to get off that. But again, the only reason I even make those comments is because I think of students who go, well, wait a minute, you keep talking about all these things like making interesting marks. My art professor said, no, don't make interesting, make ugly marks. Well, that's because he had an agenda. It's also because he was a, forgive me, mindless follower of the crowd. In our generation, in our current, not generation, like baby boomer my age, in our world today, it's the artists who are trying to create beauty who are in fact the revolutionaries in the art world. One of the ironies is, I know I'm talking about this for a long time, I'm out of there, so leave me alone. One of the ironies about the art world right now is that the modern, contemporary, angry, political, socio-political statement makers have the reputation of being cutting-edge revolutionaries. But when I walk into a gallery that features their work, I roll my eyes because this same exact, forgive me, I'm going to use another mildly bad word, crap, was being done in the early 70s when I was in college. I mean, you can't drive a knife wedge between the stuff that I saw when I was 20, 18, 19, 20 years old and the stuff that I'm seeing when I'm 64. You can't say, well, no, there's a difference. No, there is not. It's exactly the same crap. So they have the reputation of being cutting-edge revolutionaries, but in fact, it's the very opposite is true. It's the people doing the socio-political statements who are stuck in a worldview, and in spite of the way it sounds at the moment, I am not actually. It sounds like, you won't believe this. I'm not angry at modern art. I mean, it was a period we had to go through, and certainly, by the way, if you don't know me very well, I love abstract. The issue is not abstraction. I do abstract painting. I teach abstract painting. That is not the dividing line. The dividing line is between beauty and ugly. The dividing line is, what is the purpose of art? Is it to create something to look at, which is my definition of art, stuff that's made to look at with no auxiliary purpose? Is it beautiful, or is it preachy? That's the dividing line. And much abstract art is beauty. I'll pick on two of my local friends back in Raleigh, Bob Rankin and Joe and Sharon DiGiulio. There's three friends. Joe and Sharon are married to each other. They all do almost all abstract, nothing but abstract. And I love their work because they're trying to do the same kind of abstract, so to speak, that I am, which is beautiful abstract. And they're all three of them are brilliant at it. Shout out to Joe and Sharon and Bob. If anybody knows them, please tell them I'm saying good things about them on my YouTube. Okay, I'm going to get off philosophy again. The only reason I get on it is because I don't want my students to be confused. Okay, off it. Now let's talk about painting.
Can I look over your shoulder?
Absolutely. I'm here to be looked at. Yes, ma'am.
Man, look at that.
Isn't that sweet?
Yes.
You work here?
I do. I'm Kim. I'm parking enforcement.
Hi, Kim. Oh, good. I'm that van right there. I think I've got a timer set to let me know when.
Okay, perfect.
Well, tell me this, though, because I already used up my 2 hours.
So it has to go to another spot.
Does it? Can it be on the same street?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, just another spot.
Oh, excellent. Oh, I'm glad.
That's really beautiful, though.
Thank
you
you
for making my city
Oh,
look so
you're
beautiful.
welcome. I'm just trying to capture what's really there. It is beautiful.
No, he's doing a beautiful painting of my city.
Can you come back later? I'll be here for at least 2 more hours, maybe 3. Yeah.
Huh? How much will it cost? Honey,
Oh.
that's just love. I don't even know.
$1,500.
Yeah.
Yes.
As I usually say, I can't afford my own paintings.
I'll give you 15, 10.
Yeah.
Give you that $10.
I always do, by the way. Maybe you've heard me say that. I say that all the time. It usually kind of diffuses tension. When people walk up and ask me how much my paintings are and they expect me to say $100, I can see it on their face. That's what they think I'm going to say. Then I say $1,500, $2,000, $1,000. And sometimes they're a little bit offended, which I can understand. It's like, well, you're just painting for the 1%, aren't you? You know, those 1% rich people that we all are supposed to hate. Man, if you're an artist, you better love that 1%, because that's who's buying your paintings. If anybody's going to buy them, it's just them. So bless them. Lord, make all the rich people in America richer. That's what I want. Because then they'll buy more paintings. Anyway, but I can see, you can see that kind of mild offended look, and I always say, I understand, man, I can't afford my own paintings. which is literally true. I mean, I don't have $1,000 to drop on a painting. Are you kidding? I need money. And conversely, at least until just a few months ago, and it's an unusual story, there were none of my paintings in our house. No. My house is full of my artwork. Let me repeat it. Let me get clarified. None of my currently marketable paintings are in my house. Does that make sense to you? No paintings of this style. Until a couple months ago, I got a painting back from one of my galleries, which of course happens all the time. You know, it was there for a year and a half or something like that, and it didn't sell. So the gallery owner rightly gave it back, said, "Yeah, this one just hasn't sold." So I do what I normally do when a painting comes back to me. I repaint it. I don't mean paint over it. I tweak it. I fix it. I say, yeah, it was a year and a half ago that I painted that. Doggone it, I'm a better painter than I was a year and a half ago. So I'm going to tweak it. So this particular painting, I tweaked, and it sure enough definitely made it a better painting. And but right at that moment, we were, because of my mother-in-law moving in and out of our master bedroom. That's a long story, but my dear mother-in-law, who I love, has been living with us on and off for the last year. And when she lives with us, she can't go upstairs, so she lives in my wife's and my bedroom. So it just happened to be that it was one of those moments that we were needing, redecorating the room. And so I took this painting and I slapped it up on the wall. In fact, I'd entered into a competition. And so when you enter a painting in competition, you can't sell it. Because if you enter, if it gets in the show, you have to be able to send the painting to This is Oil Painters of America. It ended up not getting in the show. But doggone, we enjoyed having that painting on our wall, on our bedroom wall so much. So, okay, for the first time in my career, I actually have one of my own paintings on the wall. Boy, that was a long story, wasn't it? I'm just trying to explain that I can't afford my own artwork. And until very recently, there was none of my artwork was woo! There you go. So I know how it feels to not be able to afford my paintings. One of the nice things about painting, as I do, by stages or by degrees, is that you only have to worry about, so to speak, what I do is isolate each problem. I'm focused on usually just one problem at a time. So at the moment, I'm focused on drawing, on a bunch of linear stuff. Does that make sense? In fact, at the end of this stage, I consider my painting will be too linear, too liney, has too many lines in it. But I'm not done with the painting, so some of that lininess will be alleviated before I'm all finished. But just the fact that I don't have to worry right now about color, not worrying about color, not worrying about composition, not worrying about values. Those are huge areas, right? But the fact that I am not worrying about all those right now, all I'm worrying about, so to speak, all I'm worrying about is composition. So I like my approach to painting because I isolate each individual step of the painting process. Right now, it's just drawing. That's nice. I don't have to worry about a whole bunch of other stuff. I think I'm done. Now, before I leave drawing, per se, I'm going to grab two of these little chip brushes. Here's one of the ways I de-linify. Push back some of the lininess of my drawing is by scratching. And I really like this trick. And you can see, even I don't care if my scratching is a little bit abstract. What I'm scratching now is not only through the lines I just made in the last 10 minutes, but I'm actually scratching through the glaze that I put over the entire canvas. The one thing I can't do is scratch through the acrylic lines. The acrylics are all dry, of course, so but I get some really neat, I don't know if you can see that. Let me zoom in real close just for a second. So, like, I just did a scratch there. Let me do another one right there. Yeah, a little bit. So, do you see that purple that showed up? That was part of the acrylic underpainting. And a little bit of blue right there, because I'm scratching off the glaze. Again, a little bit of blue right there. I'm scratching off all the oil back to the bare acrylics, and of course most of my oil glazes were dark. So when I'm scratching, I'm creating little bits of light. I just want to point that out, that it's really creates a really fun little interplay of light versus dark, and it's easy. You know, I'm accomplishing much with very little effort. Same thing here, edge of this. So really, this step right here could also be described as a drawing step. This would be drawing number 8, right? Drawing layer number 8. And then wherever I've got tree branches, it's almost always a good idea just to create some branch-like scratches. Yeah, that worked well. Okay, just about done then with drawing in oils. And often at this point, most often, I go straight to drawing with pencils. Okay, time for me to take a little break because I need to go and move my car. So, break time. I'll be Hey Richard, so I missed your comment earlier. Good to see it now. So again, a little change in what had been my routine for a long time. Now I think perhaps I'm into a different routine. Again, in the bubble in the donut of creativity, not stuck in a rut. The hole, not crazy doing new crazy things every day. That's missing the donut. I'm in the moderate zone of creativity. And so even though for a while my technique was draw in brushes and then draw in pencils, now it appears that my modified technique is draw in brushes or pencils, either one, and then do the infamous fuzz layer. And maybe not infamous to you. Pretty fuzz layer. This is still a fairly new, the last 2 years, new development. That's called new in my world. When you're as old as me, 2 years is pretty basic. And I should say when you're as fresh as I am. I'm still growing. Happy to say still growing as an artist. So doing this fuzz layer. I could also call it the messy layer. This is the stage at which I want to create a whole bunch of soft edges as opposed to hard edges, because my default setting is, even in abstraction, even in impressionistic stuff, my default setting is hard edges. So I have introduced this, or I've discovered that this is a great way for me to get away from too much hardness, and it is by doing messiness. And I call it my fuzz layer. It has 4 specific characteristics. Ready for those 4 characteristics? 1, it's all translucent, not opaque. It's opaque paint. That is, it has white in it. I'll show you my palette in just a second. Here's what I'm mixing up right now. This is white and a little bit of yellow ochre, which, by the way, is my favorite yellow for warming up a white. I don't use yellow. I use yellow ochre. So it's opaque paint, but applied very thinly. Therefore, translucent. And I know I continue to hear, this has nothing to do with whether you're an artist or not. This has to do with whether you're gifted with languages, including your own. Many people who are not, and that's all right, we're all gifted in different ways. Many people who are not great at language, they conflate the difference between transparent and translucent. But I think even most of those people, if they'll just stop for a moment and think, they know the difference between you, I'm talking to you, you know the difference between transparent and translucent. So I just want to make sure that you understand that right now I am definitely painting in translucent color, not transparent. Okay, so it's the 4 characteristics of my fuzz layer is transparent, soft edges, local color, and glow. Now, if you've been following me today, you know that I already introduced a new element, a new degree of glow, new to me, in right here today. It's something new, which might stick. Because, boy, I really like it. And that is, before I leave the acrylic layer, the last acrylic layer, I intentionally added a bunch of glow to my canvas. Glow means light color, soft edges. Okay? Now, the whole time that I'm doing this, what I'm doing right now, I'm kind of cringing. I'm kind of going, oh, I don't know that I can, this is too much. This is too loose. Ooh, this is too messy. I want you to know that's what's going on inside my heart, head, soul, mind. It's like, oh my goodness, I know it's supposed to be messy, but this messy? Okay? And I'm trying to discipline myself and say, yeah, say to that voice, shut up. Yes, this messy. And I think of some of my favorite painters. I have a short list that I keep talking about all the time. Not that there aren't a whole bunch of others that could make this list, but it's my short list right now. Richard Schmidt, Tibor Nagy, Jeremy Mann, and maybe a slightly second list, B list to that. That's my A list. My B list might be G. Harvey and Lalloué, Gallian Lalloué. I forget his first name right now. He's a recent addition to that. He's a 1920s painter of Paris, France. Okay, so when I think about, with the exception perhaps of Lalloué, when I think of all those others, the difference between me and most of those other people is they are messier than I am. So that encourages me that, okay, I haven't fallen off the planet. I'm not crazy. It is okay for me to paint messier than I do. Are you with me? So that's what I think. Oh, and then the 4th characteristic of this stage of the painting process is local color. So if I get to this point in the painting process and I've got some color that's really off and it needs lightning, like I'm doing right up here, some of this building has some, at the moment, has some really dark red on it. It's too dark. So I'm just scumbling in some messy lightness. Yeah. And again, messy, messy, messy. This could also be called my messy layer. Got it. I think I'm done. So I just added a bunch of glow, added a bunch of mess, added a bunch of light, soft edges with light transparent paint. Okay. Now, having done that, I've just obliterated a bunch of the pencil lines that were showing a little while ago, and now they're almost all gone. So I feel like I can come back and do just a little bit more. But no, again, why do I do pencil? Forgive me, I know you guys, if you follow me, you hear this over and over. You hear the same things, but there's new people watching. Why do I use pencil? It is not because I need to draw, quote unquote, draw the subject matter. My subject matter is plenty well drawn here. That's not it. The reason I do pencil is because it's almost an entirely abstract consideration. That is, I do pencils because I like the interplay, I like the juxtaposition. Are you with me? I hope my words aren't too big. I like the juxtaposition of smooshy paint with scratchy pencil, or the other way around is better. I like the juxtaposition of scratchy pencil with smooshy paint. They look good next to each other. And this is still a fairly recent development, maybe 2.5 years, something like that, in my painting journey. And one of the things that really encouraged me, one of the things that has encouraged me that I'm not just nuts, it's not just me, that I might continue this for the rest of my life, maybe, is that when I have looked at other artists' paintings, at times I have discovered that I like their paintings better when they use pencil as well. And that has happened a couple times now, and that encourages me, like, oh, okay, so maybe it's not just me. Maybe I really do like the look that this creates. Because it's easier for me, of course, for all of us to be objective about somebody else's painting. And of course I do use it. I do use the pencil stage to increase similitude, that is realism, like right now, scratching in some of those figures, those people there, you know, just a touch of realistic drawing. Now, once again, at the end of this stage, at the end of this pencil phase, my painting will be, once again, too liney. It'll have too many lines in it. But not to fear. I have one more stage of the painting process to go. After this, one more phase, one more stage. And that stage is light, opaque highlights. It is the editing. It is the number one editing, the final edit, if you will. And in any field of human endeavor, of course, it is the final edit that is the most important. Whether it's film or literature or art, the final edit is the last word. So when I do the final edit, I'm going to obliterate, cover up a fair amount of this pencil work. It's a lot easier to put the pencil lines down and then eliminate them than it is to add them. Does that make sense? Putting marks down is not the same as editing. Editing does not require much creativity. It requires critical thinking. Putting the marks down requires creativity. I've never said that before. That bears repeating. So I've broken my entire painting process down into two distinct categories. One category is creating, and the other category is editing. And editing is easier than creating. That's part of the reason why my painting process is designed to make this easy. So I'm not both creating and editing in the same stage. I edit, then I create, then I edit, then I create. And right now I'm creating by adding a bunch of lines to the painting. In a little while, in the final stage is an editing stage where I'm mostly removing things. Saying, yeah, that's a good mark, no, that's not such a good mark, and covering it up. And I've never used that exact verbiage before, but that's a pretty appropriate way to describe it. Creative stages and editing stages. In the creative stages, you're adding stuff to, well, I'm adding elements to the canvas, to the painting. In this case, I'm adding lines. In the editing stage, I'll be essentially removing lines, diminishing lininess. The entire painting process for me, the entire painting process is underpainting, except for the very last layer. Only the last layer is overpainting. And I know we don't use that term overpainting generally, but I don't know what else to call it. I need a word to distinguish from underpainting. So it seems like the most obvious thing to call it. The overpainting stage is editing. I'm not at that point. I'm not adding a lot of elements to the canvas, to the painting. I'm basically taking, like, there's a lot of drips in here. Which drips do I keep? I don't know. Not my job right now to decide that. That'll come in the last layer. Then I'll decide how many of these drips I like, how many of them I don't like. How many of these, is it my job to decide right now how many lines are too many? Nope, it's not my job. My job is to try to creatively put lines where I think maybe they should go. The last stage is, oh, I don't need that line. Let's wipe that one out. Oh, yeah, that's a good line. Let's keep that one. Does that make sense? So again, the fact that I'm breaking my painting process down into each stage is a fairly clearly identifiable stage that makes the whole painting process much easier. I know some people, and I've done it, some people do, they're doing composition, color, values, texture, everything all at once. Perfectly fine way to paint. My way just happens to be easier. I'm lazy. I'm a lazy SOB. I know it's a son of a gun. Yeah. A lazy son of a gun. SOG. There we go. There's a woman standing facing that way, and there's a man reading looking at his cell phone walking that way. And again, right now my job is to make a bunch of marks, not to do the final edit. The final edit is the final thing. I guess that's kind of obvious, isn't it? That's why we call it final. And I'm just about done. Just about got enough pencil lines. Yep, like it. Done with the pencils, I believe. Put those away. And I'm into the final stage. I'm going to take a little break here. Let me tell you what the final stage consists of. First of all, I'm going to have white paint. See that white paint on my palette? I just added it there just a few minutes ago. It's going to be light paint, light colors, opaque, more hard edges than soft, although I'll go back and forth on that. And that'll make the painting, so right now the painting's a little bit dark. When I'm done this last layer, it'll be just a little bit lighter here and there, here and there, here and there, because of this last light layer. All of my major decisions have already been made. The composition is locked in, the drawing locked in, the basic color locked in. I'm going to tweak color a little here and there. Basic drawing is done. Does that make sense to you? I'm not going to be coming here and make huge changes. No. Not adding some, sometimes when our student is following me in a class, and like if they're going to put a bush up here close, they said, well, I was saving that to last. Oh my goodness, I turned white. No. My painting is very much like watercolor painting. You watercolors know exactly what I mean. The rest of you, let me explain. Watercolor is a transparent medium. If there's going to be a bush down here, you don't slap it on top of something underneath. If you, in a watercolor painting, if there's a bush here, there's a bush there from the very, very, very beginning. Same thing with me. This is all transparent, very watercolor-ish approach to oil painting. So you don't add any. I'm not going to add a car here or here. If I wanted a car there, I needed to add it in the first layer, at least the second or the third. Okay, so the last layer then just is popping some details, pushing the brightness, correcting little tiny bits of color, and editing, edit, covering up whatever whatever doesn't need to be. See, now the canvas is 90% finished. This last layer is only of light opaque highlights. Is only going to have 10 to 15% of the canvas. In this case, probably no more than 10% of the canvas is going to get paint on it. But it's a very important 10%, critically important. Okay? I'll be back in a little bit. Thanks for watching. Hey, welcome back. So I'm ready to get going with the last phase, the last layer of the painting process. The slowest layer, even though it covers the least acreage, covers the smallest amount, it is the slowest because it's the final edit. It consists of light opaque highlights. Final corrections, which hopefully are minimal, which I think they are in this case. And I pulled up a stool. I'm sitting down because I want to be able to take my time, not get in a hurry. Generally speaking, in this final layer, if I've done the underpainting correctly, in my world correctly, the majority of this overpainting is I match the colors that are already here and there and here and there on the canvas. You don't usually introduce something wild and crazy and new. I match, this is a great example. I'm just going to match, I'm going to mix up an opaque version of what's already there and go in and do some of the final drawing. Now my danger, my tendency, my personal failing is I enjoy these little hard-edged dots of color so much that I tend to overdo this layer. Part of the reason I'm telling you that is to try to keep me from doing that. Okay, when I'm teaching this layer in a class, I give my students 2 rules they must follow in an attempt to try to keep them from going off the rails. One rule is only 15% of the canvas is going to have paint on it. Now in this case, I think it's more like 10%. This is a 24 by 30 inch canvas. So you do the math. How many inches is that? Less than 10%. So like an area about this big is going to have paint on it. Does that make sense? Opaque paint. The other thing is, I say that if you put down one mark and then you put down another that touches that first mark, you have to leave daylight, a gap, before you put down a third mark. Okay, so those are just 2 guidelines. I don't follow them slavishly because I feel like I get the principle. I do both of those things pretty intuitively. And again, where do you start the last layer? Four options. One is with the furthermost object, which in this case is a little bit of the sky way up here. That's an option, not a good one. Second option is start at the lightest, brightest, whitest thing. Real obvious in this case. It's this right here. This where the sun's hitting this wall. Third option is start with a focal point, which in this case is exactly the same thing. Focal point's right here. And fourth option is local color. If there's any large area that really needs to get tweaked, and this is a good candidate. This wall right here, which is very close, I could start there. And also this blue area over here is a little too blue, slightly. I'm thinking, you can see my face. You would see me thinking, just like this. The wind is kicking up, by the way. It kicks up much more. I'll run to my car, which is parked now right behind me, and get a car battery. Hello. Thank you. I've got a car battery that weighs 70 pounds that I'll put on the base of my knee so it'll hold it down. I'm going to save this white area. I actually want to start in a slightly, still a highlight, but just for some reason I want to start up here. Which technically is not one of those 4 things I just mentioned, technically. But good enough, it's where I want to start. That's where my intuition tells me to start today. By the way, the whole process of painting, I mean, I know I talk, I use words. Somebody not too long ago said, enough of the talk, paint already. They didn't say exactly that way, but that's what they meant. Sorry about that. Anyway, I have no shortage of words, but the reason I use so many words is I'm trying to take, I was going to say, the whole process of painting, the entire painting world is intuitive. It's visual. It's not left-brain analytical. It's intuitive. But the challenge for those of us who are trying to get better at painting is to take things that are intuitive and to give them verbiage, to put them in words. both so that we can teach others how to paint better, and of course so that we can have a little bit of a grasp on how we paint ourselves. I would love to have had a conversation, for instance, with Vincent van Gogh, because I would have needed an interpreter, unfortunately. I don't speak French. I would love to know how keyed in was he to what he was doing. Now, what he did, because his paintings look so intuitive, and he was such a renegade, you know, he was breaking ground, new territory as a painter. Nobody painted like him. Man, but was he able to articulate why he was doing? I suspect that he wasn't. I suspect that he was just one of those creative geniuses who worked so crazy out of the right side of his brain that I'm just guessing here, that he wouldn't be able to tell you much why he was doing what he was doing. That's just a guess on my part. I love Vincent van Gogh. Very definitely a modern painter. Very definitely a modern painter. But he was not preaching, was he? He was very obviously intensely engaged in the creation of beauty. I love those beautiful. Okay. I'm saying to myself, restrain yourself, Nelson. Restrain yourself. Don't do too much. If you allow yourself to do as much as you feel like you want to do, I'm talking to you all as well as myself. If you allow yourself the luxury of doing as much as you feel like you should, as much as you want to, you are overdoing it. So I'm preaching that sermon to myself very intensely right now. Do not overdo it. Cut yourself short. The old question, which I get asked rightly many times, how do you know when you're finished, is a very good question. I actually have a literal correct answer to that question, by the way. It's no great mystery. A painting is finished when it sells. Of course, unless the buyer comes back to you and wants changing, but generally speaking, so that's the real answer. A painting is finished when it sells. But when you go back to the intent of what people mean, that's not what people normally mean when they ask. They mean what the painting is on your canvas. How do you know when you're finished? And I will tell you that is one of the best questions in the entire history of art. If we as artists, by the way, the category I'm doing right now is actually essentially local color. If we as artists knew when each painting was done, we would be better painters. So that's one of the hardest things to know, is when a painting is finished. Now, in the case of my painting style, where, and most people do, it's just maybe not quite as clearly delineated as mine. I have as you know, if you follow me, if you've watched me today, I have a phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to about 12. I have about 12 stages of the painting process, right? Right? So how do I know when is a painting finished? The answer is when I finish the 12th stage. But again, that doesn't really, and that is not what you meant when you asked the question. That does not answer the question. In fact, the good question, when is a painting finished, if you have, as I do, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so and so and so. But if you have step 1, several discrete steps, the question, when is a painting finished, simply gets extended out over each of those phases. So now, for me, the question is, when is each? By the way, let me zoom in a little real close so you can see just for a second. There's a purple drop, a purple drip right here. And I love drips, and I really do. I keep most of my drips, but this one, for some reason, it's like, I don't think so. So watch, I'm going to wipe it out, but not wipe it out with an angry attitude. So you can still see a tiny bit of it right there, right there. That's this, and again, this is what I call editing. This is the editing process. deciding what to keep and what not. Okay. So for me, the question, when is a painting finished, is simply then extrapolated out into each layer. And the question is, when is each layer finished? And here's the next answer to that question. And this is a psychological answer, but is about as literal as I can get. When is each layer finished? And if you're an artist, the answer is before you think it is. Are you with me? Get that? When is each layer finished? I'm not, I don't know how many minutes, but let's just say, about 10 to 20 minutes before you think it's finished. And that's for you students especially. That is something for you to internalize, try to grasp, get a hold of, and grasp internally. You're done before you think you are. And if you paint like me, you're done with each phase and stage. If you give yourself permission to finish each layer as far as you think it ought to be finished, you almost assuredly have overdone that layer. Okay? And that is some good art advice right there. If I have to say so myself. And by the way, I start the last layer with one of 4 categories, and evidently the category that I'm slipping into today is local color. This is not the brightest area, it's not the focal point. I mentioned this, I've just gone from there to there. It just seemed like a natural progression for some reason. So what I'm doing is local color. Let me go back to the statement I was making. If you give yourself permission to take as long as you think you ought to take on each stage or phase of the painting process, you almost certainly are overdoing it. And I know this. I know it about my own painting. Therefore, of course, if you take that to the absurd, that means you could put up a blank canvas on your easel. Are you with me? Following that, taking that principle to the absurd level, and not make a single mark on it and say, there, I'm done. So, okay, so that doesn't, that will not fly, because I am not done. Okay, so the blank canvas is not finished. So somewhere between a blank canvas and done is the real done. By the way, you can probably see here, I'm fighting now with sun. Oh, by the way, take just a second and show you some of my easel. So, in fact, I'm going to give you a little circus ride, so hang on. This is essentially a store-bought H, I just ran into a tree, H-style easel. You can recognize the basic structure of an H easel, so-called because it's shaped like an H. Like it's one of the most fundamental kind of easels in the world. Now, I have added to mine a storage box, which has electronics in it, can hold a car battery to run lights and sound. I've added to it this is all added. There's my paints. This is a store-bought box. I invented this, invented how this attaches to the easel, invented this bucket handle, invented this double bucket system, which I love, added wheels, so this whole thing becomes a cart when I'm packing up, and finally, way up here at the top, well, here's a handle for, when it's a cart, this is for rolling the cart, and this is a traditional, Ace Hardware, a flag holder, and by the way, the plastic ones are better than the metal ones. And so I built this, and that holds my umbrellas, which helps me a great deal on a day like this to keep the sunshine off my canvas. Although, see, I've got sun there and there, and I can't paint. You can't paint because you can't judge color when there is sun on your canvas. So let me put you back down so you're not getting a circus ride anymore. And I think I'm going to run to my car and get a slightly larger umbrella so it will alleviate this problem. Okay, little break, I'll be back. All right, welcome back. Thank you for joining me. I realize now that I'm sorry, during my last entire broadcast section, my sound might have been bad. I am so sorry. I'm still growing that area. Sorry, my growth is so painful to you. Maybe it was all right. I'm not sure. I won't know until I go back, but I suspected it was bad. Okay, so it's again in the last phase, the last stage, the last layer of the painting process. And today what I'm evidently doing is a lot of local color in the mid-tone area. I have yet to get to the focal point of the painting in the lightest and brightest area. It's nice to know that not all the bad sounds that you hear are my fault. Just some of them. So obviously, by painting this part of the painting way over here, I'm pretty far from the focal point of the painting. So I certainly don't want to do too much. It's a little bit dangerous to paint. I'll get you straightened out here in a minute. It's a little bit dangerous to paint so far from the focal point because there's a grave temptation to overdo it, to paint too much. So I'm trying to resist that temptation. And so far I think I'm succeeding, but it's the kind of thing you don't realize you've blown it till it's too late, if you know what I mean. Let me carve the shoulder of this woman, both shoulders actually a little bit. Try to make it look a little bit more like a person. Bring the top of her head down a little bit. And then just, I want this to look like a row of shop windows with trees, of course.
Hello. Downtown Norfolk?
I am not allowed to answer that question.
Okay, it looks like that's what I was asking. Looks like it's on this corner.
That's why I'm not allowed.
Okay, I can tell. I was like, oh.
Because I know you'll figure it out.
That is good.
Thank you. Thank you. Whenever people ask me, what I'm painting, I usually refuse to answer, usually in a joking way, but because I don't want to rob from them the joy of discovering it for themselves. They really are smart enough to figure it out, most people. Especially, in fact, here's an unusual situation today. I'm actually pointing, my easel is actually pointing at what I'm painting, which is very unusual. I'm almost always. And why am I pointed this way? It has nothing. In fact, it's awkward because now I have to lean way over like this to see what I'm painting. But what dictates what direction you set up is the sun. It's not. Now, if you paint little tiny paintings, like a lot of plein air painters do, then it makes sense for your canvas to be facing pointed at what you're painting. But when you paint this large, it doesn't, and this isn't really very large, 24 by 30, it really doesn't make sense at all. It's quite awkward to be facing what you're painting. Anyway, people often get confused. I'll tell you the absolute record for visual, I want to be nice, lack of visual acuity. One time I was painting at a wedding reception. It was out in the country, literally out in a field, out in the middle of the country, in a field. And the sun went down, and everywhere that wasn't lit up by the lights imported by the production was pitch black. In other words, when you stood in the circle of light where the wedding reception was going on, and you looked out anywhere else, there was no sun, no moon, no horizon, no trees, because you're, of course, partly blinded. It was pitch black. So I had my easel, as you can imagine. It was set up so the light a little bit, I mean, I had my own light, but, you know, so the light from I was facing the blackness. Because, and the scene I was painting was behind me, right? You with me? People are so convinced that, like the cartoon artists they've seen, you know, the artists they've seen in cartoons set up their easel facing what they're painting. And this person, I can't remember who, I think it was a woman, she was so convinced that I had my easel set up facing what I was painting that she came and she looked at my canvas, then she looked out in the dark. And I mean, what I was painting was a dead ringer for what was right behind her. It was obviously a painting of the you know, the tent and the table and the bride and the groom and everything. It was all behind me, right? And I was late it wasn't like in the early abstract stages. No, this was when it was nearly finished. And she looked out in the dark, and she looked at my canvas. She looked out in the dark, and she looked at my canvas. And I sure hope she's not listening to this broadcast. Because that was about as visually dumb as anything I've ever seen. Oh my goodness. Well, we're all good at something, aren't we? We're all bad at something. There's a lot of stuff I'm bad at. Whew. And those of us who are good at things should not tease, like I'm doing right now, and being naughty. We should not tease the people who are bad at the things that we're good at. I don't know if you know that. That's a general rule for life. Stop that. Stop ridiculing people because they're not as good as you are at things. And I usually follow that rule just right at the moment I'm violating it. Because obviously I'm having way too much fun violating it. Okay, now back to the topic. I'm probably maybe almost done with this. That brown's a little too intense. I'll come back and beat that down later. Nah, let me beat it down right now. Let's get it over with. A lot of in this final stage, this final painting process, especially recently, some of my recent developments in this final area is painting very definitely dull, grayish, beating down the color is what I call this right here. It's just that's too intense. This little canopy over here, I want it to be there, but I don't want it nearly that intense. So let's just beat that thing down a little bit, get it where we want it. By the way, I will say that in that school painting I've been talking about all day today that I screwed up the perspective. I will say I'm pretty happy. There's a part of it I like, and I'm going to fix it. It's still at home, still on my easel at home. But I like the way I handled the children, the foreground of that painting, the kids in the playground up close. Is a new level of what's the word? Skill. It's not the word I'm looking for. Virtuosity. A new level of virtuosity for me in what I'm doing right here. Pushing down things that shouldn't be drawing so much attention with very dull colors, diminishing the energy. Like over here, there's little bits of dark stuff. I'm not obliterating them. In fact, most of these strokes, I'm letting the object, the dark stuff, show through on both sides of my stroke. Here's another one. Can you see what I'm doing? Let me zoom in here. See this blob right there? It's a little bit too big and a little too dark, so I'm going to take almost the same color, just one tick lighter, and cover up that blob, but not completely. It's peeking through on the top and the bottom. I just lightened the middle of it. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. There. So I think that whole area might be finished now. It's finished enough for now, except for this woman. I'll work on here later. I think I want to come now to this middle area. Let me wipe off my brushes. I don't think I need to clean them. Just give them a good wipe. And they'll have a dirty dull gray on them, and that'll be a good start for this mid-tone. Now again, my tendency as an artist is probably just the same as most of you my tendency is to do too much. Yet part of the reason I'm saying that is I want to hear myself say that out loud in hopes of avoiding that very error, that very mistake. So I look at this and go, oh yeah, I need to color in all this, all these little bits, and then the smarter side of my brain goes, oh no you don't, no you don't. Choose your bits, the little bits that you're going to paint. Choose them carefully. Okay, so I think I want one there. So and basically, what I've just done down here on my palette, I've just mixed up a color. See that dull brown beige? That is essentially the same as this color. Okay, so it's, again, in this final stage of the painting process, it's mostly a matter of matching what is already there on the canvas. And I've already called this final step is the final edit layer. So I'm not really responsible very often for creating something new. I don't have to create new stuff. I'm pushing back, actually. I'm eliminating things. Like right now I'm eliminating an overly sharp edge, pencil line. That's why it's down here, eliminating the dark area. Now the edge of this window, let's get this. Okay. And now this phase, this stage, okay, let me go back to my palette just for a minute. I mixed this up just a few minutes ago, right? Then I painted some. In this final stage, I just added some titanium white to that pile because, and this applies to all traditional oil painting, it's almost always a good idea to mix up a slightly lighter version of what you just put down and put it down on top of what you just, the marks you just made. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the darker color and pick up just a little bit of, I got transparent oxide ochre, transparent yellow ochre, or gold ochre, I can't remember. Anyway, so I'm back to my darker color now. And there's way too many pencil lines in here. I guess I'll the danger of me zooming in like this, as you probably well know, is that I forget that I'm zoomed in and I go painting elsewhere on the canvas and leave you guys in the dark. So I'm going to try to remember not to do that. So right at the moment I'm editing out. See, I'm editing out some pencil lines. I'm editing out some purple underpainting, some of the acrylics that are crazy colors underneath. I like the crazy colors, but it's just a little bit too much of it. So I'm just coming in and doing just a few details. And see how detailed I am right now, even how I'm holding the brush. If I stay in this mode too long, I will way overdo this step of the painting process. So I need to be very careful. If I'm doing quite a bit of detail right in here, I am not going to carry that across this whole area, or I will way overdo it. Again, as I said a while ago, how do you know when you're done? Well, if you let yourself finish until you feel like you're finished, it's too late. You have overdone it. Man, that's a good rule. I'm going to try to remember that. Which, by the way, I think I've said this before, which is part of the reason why I broadcast so much. First of all, I enjoy it. I enjoy the audience. I enjoy your company. But part of the reason is that if I'm talking to you guys, if I'm teaching, you know, the teacher always learns more than the pupils, right? You've heard that old adage? Well, that's what I'm doing. By talking to you guys about what is good painting, I help myself stay online. Now I'm going to zoom in as close as I can. I guess that's it right now. I want you to see, do you see this fat dark blob right here? It is not, it's part of the acrylic underpainting. I can't scratch it off. It's an unpleasant mark. Now the grumpy mind would take a brush like this and obliterate it, wipe it off. But my mind is not grumpy, so let me show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to diminish it, but not obliterate it. You can you still see there's a little bit of it showing on this side? And of course, this is the correct side over here because it defines a little bit of the architecture of that wall. That's good painting. Bad painting is when you get grumpy at yourself. And you're saying, "Rucka, shaka, rucka, why did I make that ugly mark?" And then you cover it up because you can. That's completely the wrong, if I may, the wrong part of your soul from which to paint. You don't paint from that grumpy soul. When you do paint from the grumpy part of your soul, you are painting crap. So keep the grumpy away. Stop beating yourself up. And I know how you guys talk to yourself because I hear it all the time. Well, I'm not very good. Well, I'm not good. This isn't really very good. I'm sorry, I'm not very good. Shut the blankety blank up. Stop that stuff. Stop that negative self-talk. Don't. That's what's making you a bad artist, is that horrible negative self-talk. You'd be a great artist if you just told yourself you were a great artist. Don't look at me like that. Okay. I'll calm down now. By the way, what I'm doing right here, this is a building just for a second. Whoops, we seem to be frozen. Whoop, 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 whoop. All right, I discovered a minute ago that my camera had frozen. Sorry about that. I don't know what you missed. So I'm just going to continue from where I left off, even though it turns out you weren't with me for part of that. At the moment, right now, I'm doing mid-tone areas of the final layer. And I am, at the moment, eliminating some pencil lines. There's way too many pencil lines. But again, you don't eliminate things with a grumpy, erasing kind of attitude. Why did I do that? That was so stupid. No, 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 no. Never, never, never paint with that attitude. Okay, let's continue around this side of the building. I started there, got distracted. Let's go back to it. Mixing up a dull beige tan color. Let's cut off the top of this lady's head. I'm saying that's a lady, who knows. Now, if I may, zoom in here real quick. See, here's a person. See this dark, slightly dark shape right here? That was an earlier guess at where this head should go. Then I discovered, no, that's way too high. So that actually I drew it too low, and then the third time I drew it here, which I'm thinking is the correct. Now, do you see that dark spot? If you get angry at yourself and say, why am I so stupid? I always make those mistakes. Why? I wish I could draw better. I wish I could draw like Dan Nelson. Oh, I'm sure that's what everybody says. But no, you don't think that way at all. That false mark, now I'm diminishing it, but not eliminating it. Same thing here. All of this brown here is a mistake, is a false mark. I'm going to fix it right now by making a correction. But you'll notice I'm not obliterating it. I'm using the false mark to create more interest in the painting. More interest than this little area now has more interest than it would have had if I had not made that quote-unquote mistake. Does that make sense? So many of you need to learn to not be uptight about those mistakes. It's making your painting better. So you have a whole bunch of little busyness going on. In fact, the danger could be too busyness, yeah. But it's easy to eliminate busyness by just marking through it like that. The danger is not that you put too much stuff in your painting. The danger is that you don't put enough. Less is more is a statement of irony. The literal truth is more is more. That's why we call it more, as I say in one of my famous old videos 8 years ago. Less is more is an ironic statement. It irritates the fire when I hear half-educated people saying less is more, as though it's the truth. It's not the truth. It's an irony. There are times when that's good, but when it comes to visual stuff, most of the time our eyes prefer to see more, not less. Whew. Okay, I'll get off that high horse. Back up here again.
That's really good.
Thank you.
What are you painting that for?
I'm actually part of an event that's happening on the east side of Norfolk, over by East Beach. Yeah. We're doing a fundraiser, so we're selling art on Sunday.
That's really good.
There's 19 of us in town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know about it.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Okay. Expand now, so hopefully I'll be able to see. Thank you very much. Little correction to the line, to the drawing there, just straighten up that line. I'm going to add some green. This is actually got a little bit of green in it, like this over here, so I'm going to add green to that later. Let's try to clean up. I feel like too many horizontal lines, too much mess going on here, so I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. But again, the attitude, the feeling that I've got right now, I'm sitting down, I'm comfortable, I enjoy this kind of stuff. If I carry this too much, it'll be too much. So I need to be very careful. I'm riding the brakes. Do you know that expression? It's like I'm going downhill in the mountains in a car, say, or a bicycle. Let's go back to a car. Actually, you know not to ride the brakes on a mountain, right? But anyway, forget that. I'm riding the brakes because I don't want to get going too fast. I dare not get carried away doing what I'm doing right now. And one of the ways to keep from doing too much is to step back from your painting frequently and get a broad look. And that is the one thing I don't do very well, especially because I'm broadcasting, because you guys are watching, so I feel like I need to keep, kind of keep the thing going so I'm not boring you to death. And I know that's not a good excuse, but that is one slight downside of broadcasting so much, is that I have my nose right in my painting and I'm not taking enough breaks from it to see if I'm overdoing it. Okay, so far I feel like I'm okay. Now, to continue, basically the same process where you see that area, that brown tan stuff, I think is all done now. But I want to clean up some of this also. So here's what I'm going to do, because if I carry this up here, that'll be way too much. But I can do this one trick, and that is I'm going to start painting with a duller, that's really the best word for it, a more muted color. So I'm just right now I'm picking up the king of mute, which is burnt umber or raw umber. Do you follow me? That is like that is mute, man. That is about as dull a color as you can get. And I also put some purple because I'm matching what's already here. So hopefully the marks that I'm making now won't jump off the canvas quite as much as what I was doing. It's a duller, darker color. So I still can clean up some of this stuff, and it needs cleaning up because it's just a little too abstract and messy. But the fact that I'm cleaning up with a darker duller, grayer, browner, mousy gray, muddy color. By the way, mud has nothing to do with color, it has everything to do with opacity. Yes. I'm not going to repeat that. You go to my, do a search for Dan Nelson mud. My 10-minute video on what is mud. It has nothing to do with color. Right now I'm using a muddy color, but it's the perfect color for this spot right here. Mud is the misuse of opacity.
That looks quite good.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Excellent.
So I think I'm okay there. And by the way, just for fun, again, those of you who saw the very beginning of this painting process, the very first thing I threw on the canvas was this big purple X. And look at, this is still part of it right here. Do you see that line? You can see it there, there. I covered it there, a little bit there, and down here. Do you see that? I'm not smart enough to paint well. I usually say this in the colloquial poor grammar. I'm not smart enough to paint good, but I'm good enough to recognize some good painting when I see it and to leave it, to not obliterate it. So again, this final step of the painting process is editing. I'm not adding a whole bunch of new stuff. I'm basically just eliminating what shouldn't be there. I'm going to stand up and spread that. Yeah, this line right here needs to be corrected. I thought it did. It needs to be raised up. It's probably what I didn't do enough of last week when I was painting that infamous, now infamous school with the bad perspective. Yeah, I think that line's correct. But now I need to correct these windows are off. So I'm taking this line right here. Let me, again, stand back one more time. And I know you can't hear me. I'm standing a little too far away and I'm not wearing my microphone at the moment. But yeah, I'm taking this line as the accurate one. This one right here. Now let me make all the other lines conform to it. And while we're at it, by the way, let's see if I can get the microphone to work again. Hang on just for a second. Okay, you should be hearing me. You're hearing a sound, a horn sounding. Okay. I'm taking this line up here is correct. This needs to be fixed. So once again, just basically matching the color that's already there, which in this case it has a very slight pink cast to it. And our eyes would rather see more than less. Our eyes would rather yes see than no see. Are you with me? So the fact that there's a little pink, touch of pink there is probably a good thing. Not a thing to be angry at, but a thing to capitalize on. I have no idea how that pink got there. No idea whatsoever. It happened in the early stages of the painting process when I was making a mess. Now I'm very glad that it's there. This whole area right here, that little square is getting too much attention. It's too busy. So I'm going to push it back with some muddy brown color. And there's a little touch of blue right here, which I love, but it's just too much of it. So I'm going to cover up, but not quite cover it all up. Whew. I hope that all that is making sense to you. Again, I fear that some people, they get angry at these little incidental, what they think are mistakes, when actually mistakes are their best painting. It's just not what they planned. Same thing here, a little bit too much of a good thing right there. Hard edges, of course, draw attention to themselves. But a hard edge, the hardness of the edge is determined by two things. One is the literal hardness of the edge. The other thing, hardness is determined by the degree of contrast between this color and this color. And if they're two very, 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 very close in color, the sharp line in between is read as a soft edge, even though it may be literally a hard edge. Does that make sense? Okay, maybe I'm still trying to make corrections, of course, without getting mad at anything. Least of all myself. Now it's time, again, now it's a good opportunity for me to do the trick that I talk about so often. I got a bunch of this stuff is all the same color paint, right? I had a color mixed up on my palette, and I put, so that means I mix up a bit that's slightly brighter, lighter than that, and come and do it on top of what I just did. Almost always a good idea to do that. And it almost doesn't matter. I could put these light highlights anywhere in the world and they will work. It doesn't matter. It's like, well, where do you put it? Well, you put it on top of what's already there. Not on top of the whole thing, of course. Just little bits here and there. And it really doesn't matter where you put them. It doesn't have to make logical sense. The way the light bounces in the real world is you can put light almost anywhere and the viewer's eye will accept it, will buy it. It's like, yeah, there's light shining there. You don't have to explain, well, yeah, it's bouncing off, this car that's parked on it. Do you see what I mean? Light could be coming from anywhere. Sunlight especially, it plays in a city like this. It's just boing boing. It's like billiard balls. Light is not simple like some children or beginners think. Oh yeah, the sun's hitting this building. Good grief, no, the sun is not hitting this building. The sun is hitting, that's a primary bounce, a primary reflection, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, and I'm lost beyond that. Quintary, the 5th degree bounce, but that's the way real life is. It's bounces all over the place. Just realized this light shaft right here is a street sign, and I put a line across over it, so I'm going to just, it was an oil line, so that's going to be blue eventually. Point you at what I'm talking about here just for a second. You see that street sign right about there? Yeah, it's going to be blue. Okay, back to the painting. By the way, this is some lettering on the building over there. It says Luce, L-U-C-E. And I painted it in the acrylic stage, I just slopped it in really, really loosely. Just roughed in those letters. Like over here, you can't even see them over here. And then I negative or reverse painted them. And that's a good way to do it. I want it barely readable, not quite legible, or barely legible. Either of those words will work. Either I want it barely legible or not quite legible. That's perfect. The danger is for some of you, if there's a word on the building, you'll go into penmanship mode, pick up some paint and do penmanship, L-U-C-E. Horrible, horrible mistake. Because those marks are not in keeping with the marks in the rest of the painting. I think, and I'm not hearing myself. I should have a little monitor thing coming back at me, and I'm not hearing it. Are we still on? My battery might be dead. But give me just a minute. Let me check into my. Oh yeah, battery's dead. Okay, never mind. Debating whether to go up higher on this wall. Yeah, let me just knock it out. Oh, there we go. My sound is good. Okay. Let's do some. A little bit. Not too much. See, I'm way up close to the top of my painting. That means it would be very, very easy to overdo it, to do too much detail of it. It's at the periphery of your painting is where you want the viewer to supply most of the realism, most of the details from their mind. You don't want to be supplying them with literal drawing. You want the viewer's mind to say, "Oh yeah, those are windows up there. Oh yeah, that's just a wall. Oh yeah, that building continues going up there." Because if you draw it too much, they will get stuck up there. That's why in almost all good paintings, the detail fades. The closer you get to the edge, the closer you get to the corners. I might be done. Hang on just a second. I'm asking myself, is it finished or is it not? I'm not sure. Let me mix up some dark. Again, muted, very muted color. Let's do some more burnt umber. The king of mutedness. The king of mute. Umber, the king of mute. There's a very fine line between fading at the edges and unfinished. You don't want to irritate the viewer with the feeling that you simply got lazy and didn't finish the painting. You don't want them to feel that way. So it's a very fine line. Easy to overdo it, but I have seen, I'm sure I've done it, I'm sure I've done it many times, but I remember learning that lesson one time, about 10 years ago, when I was standing in a gallery that will remain unnamed, looking at the paintings of a good painter. But he had the habit, it's a he, that's as much as I'll let you know, of fading out his paintings in the non-focal points. But to the viewer, it was not. It was like too faded. It felt like it's just unfinished. It's a very, very fine balance that I'm trying to achieve.
Hi.
Hello.
We didn't mean to disturb.
No problem.
Because I have an artist in my hands, and she's the one who spotted you first.
Really?
Are you doing this building?
I can't tell you. She can tell you what I'm doing.
Yeah, let him tell him. Because she's at Gifted Art at Virginia Beach.
Excellent. What's your name? Hi, Miriam. I'm Dan. Hold my hand for a minute. I want some my hand yours.
Can you feel it?
Receive it.
So what is he doing? Can you tell?
I'm sorry, I'm turned away from you, so it's a little bit hard to tell.
What do you call this? What type of art is it now?
Now that's a good question.
Yeah. She said a cubism movement. Is there a movement in art?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, it's impressionistic, but not impressionism. My favorite description, and of course it doesn't matter what we're doing. We're just playing games and trying to figure out. But somebody else called their style abstract realism, and that's a good description because it's obviously realistic, and like this part is almost done right there, so you can tell.
What happened to the two people that were standing there? They left?
Yeah, they're not finished yet. They'll be a little bit more realistic.
Okay.
But in abstract realism, everything is more important than the realism. The brush strokes, the color, the composition, the texture, everything is slightly more. So as you can tell, I'm not painting like this. I'm trying to get everything, exactly right. So that's what somebody else came up with. The name. No. I want it. That's correct. I want it to have energy, which I think it does.
Right. I agree. And it draws you in. Yes,
exactly. And if I draw everything for you, it doesn't draw you in as much. I can turn this down. This is my monitor.
I don't have that kind of thing, but
good for you, Miriam.
She does. She does her art and stuff.
Excellent. Well, keep up. Keep on.
Yeah, but my question is saving money into art because I at some point she's not getting a check from me no more.
Yeah.
I'm trying to explain that to her.
Okay.
Will you be able to support yourself?
Yes. Well, I support my family.
Well, fantastic. So thank you for that answer. You're giving me hope.
Good, good. Yeah. And Miriam, I just have one lesson for you. Okay, how old are you? 11. Okay, it's this, and it sounds very. Learn to draw with two hands. Now, you probably won't find another art teacher for the rest of your life that don't let anybody slap you down. I'm over 60. I didn't start painting with two hands until I was nearly 50. No, over 50. And I wish somebody had told me this when I was your age. Think about it. Are you a musician by any chance? Are you a musician by any chance?
My husband is.
Yeah. Does he play? What does he play?
Everything, keyboard,
okay.
mainly.
Does he play with two hands?
Yes, actually he does.
Of course.
Yeah.
Every musician I think except the harmonica player plays with two hands. And nobody goes, golly, he's playing with two hands.
You're right. Now that I think
all
of
musicians, all good basketball players, all good athletes play with two hands.
Right.
Artists can do the same. So, and you'll be a better painter and drawer if you learn to draw. And again, don't let any teacher slap you down. Tell her he's the best artist in America.
I can tell her that, yes.
Said paint with two hands.
So
there you go.
Can try that?
Yeah.
Which hand do you paint?
Yeah, just start doing it.
Oh man, that's beautiful.
Of course, I'm kidding about the best artist in America part.
No, you're not.
I'm just trying. I'm just trying to.
I can sit here all day and never put this together. Well, that's great.
Well, thank you.
She has it.
Good. Good.
So, do you sell your painting?
Oh yes.
Do you have a gallery that you go to?
Yes. I'm from North Carolina, so my galleries are all down in North Carolina.
So what brought you down here? Just to do this painting?
No, I'm here for a show.
Okay.
There are 19 of us in town this weekend, mostly out East Beach, east of town.
East Beach? Then you must know her art teacher. She took private lessons with Linwood, and he has an art gallery at East Beach.
No kidding.
Yeah.
It's a man named
Linwood. Yeah.
Lin?
Yeah, Linwood.
I don't think he's painting with us, but yes, he probably knows people I'm painting with.
Yeah, he probably does.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's another. East Beach that's right there in Norfolk area.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a shopping center there.
Yeah.
His
And
art
he's in there?
gallery's right there.
How about that?
And that's where she took some lessons
Oh,
from
fantastic.
Initially. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yep.
And
So that's what we're doing.
It's Sunday from what time to
Yep,
what time?
like 3. Well, the VIP, you have to buy a ticket
Okay.
to get in and buy the paintings early. Otherwise, it's open to everybody at 5.
On Sunday?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we'll find Linwood there. Well, we'll show up there.
Oh, good. That'd be fun. And whether you buy or not, you can come and just look. It'll be fun. Yeah. Good.
And you're saying she probably won't starve to death? Because that's my concern.
No, it's like
I am honestly, I cringe every time she says, what art, this art? I'm like, oh God, oh my God, oh my God.
Here's my real advice is if you have art skill, it's financially usually best to go into something that has what design. Graphic design, interior design, fashion design, industrial design, something like that. The number of people that can make a living doing what I do, and I'm 60. I didn't start making a living doing this until I was 50.
Yeah, thanks. But you did the right way. You took care of yourself and then you followed your passion.
Exactly.
That's
So
awesome.
but do something like that. Graphic, landscape design, architecture. That's useful. And
Yeah, but I'm a mom.
Yes,
I'm counting the years when I'm not writing checks anymore. No, Africa though.
Yeah,
Senegal. Yeah. Almost, you're close. Almost, you got the continent right. That's all that matters. But I worry about that. I come from a family with none of us are artists, but her father is definitely an artist. But that's not what he does for a living. To your point, he has a family to support, so you need to go do grown-up work and then follow your passion.
Bless you.
We'll see. Thank you so much. We'll come see you out.
Bless you.
Thank you.
You do it. You follow what God put in you. Whatever He put in you, that's
Yes.
what's going to come out.
That's what
But you have
matters.
to work. Everybody.
Everything that you do, you have to work your butt off. But the odds for sometimes following your passion
Yeah.
can hurt deeply. You know
That's
what I mean?
right, exactly.
But I'll support it, whatever it wants. I'm a mom.
Bless you, yes.
All right, thank you so much.
You're
See you
very
Sunday.
welcome. Bless you, bye-bye.
Thank you.
you get to eavesdrop in on some sweet, sweet, intimate conversations. Okay. I love blessing children who have an art gift. And the poor parents, as you heard there, the poor parents don't know what to do with that. Like, I don't want my kid to starve. So usually I'm encouraging, but within bounds, I try to give them a realistic. Don't usually say, oh, heck yeah, you can make a living as an artist. Because frankly, most people can't. But you can make a living if you have artistic skill. You can make a living doing, as you heard me say, the girl, the mother, by doing something that has the word design in it. Graphic design, architecture doesn't have the word design, it's designing buildings. Architecture, landscape design, fashion design, industrial product design, so on and so on and so forth. All of those use artistic skill. They're not quite as narrow as being an artist. Let me mix up a slightly lighter version of what I just did.
Excuse me, sir. Are you painting something that's adjacent like that?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. You got it. You got it.
Oh, yes, sir. That's amazing artwork right there.
Thank you.
I like that.
Thank
sir.
you.
Good job.
Okay. What I'm doing now is just really, I want this wall to be flat. So I'm basically just pushing back little bits of things that are too dark. They're punching forward by just putting a little bit of dull, medium dark on top of what's too dark. Does that make sense? I'm actually anti-coloring my painting. If you want to know the truth right now. I'm not adding color, I'm removing it. Oh, good, thank you. Good. So I think my painting is mostly finished here and here. Just the large part. A little work up here needed, not much, a little bit. And then all of this, including, right now I'm saving the focal point to last, which is unusual for me. While I have this dull brown on my brushes, I'm trying to see if there's anywhere I can use this. I don't waste too much time switching colors. That's all it is, just for efficiency. Still dull brown. Okay, I'm going to take a little break from you guys, recharge my microphone, make sure things are going well, and I'll be back in just a little bit. Thank you. All right, I'm back. Thank you for joining me again this afternoon. I started this painting about 5 hours ago, 5.5 I guess now. I forgot to look at what time it was when I started, so I don't know exactly, but about 5.5 hours. So if I can be done in half an hour, that'll be a reasonable 6-hour painting for a 24 by 30. Much of my mid-tone stuff, my darks, which is barely dark by the way, all of this can be called mid-tone. Darks, mid-tone are finished. And I feel like I need to, before I proceed, I really need to start locking in my highlights, which of course are the star of the show and the focal point. So I've done all this painting in the final layer and have yet to get to the focal point, which is very, very unusual for me. Nothing wrong with that, just unusual. Okay, so let's start slapping down some light stuff. lunch while I was gone. A little tiny break. Ate pizza from the pizza restaurant right across the street from me here. Staring at a pizza place all day, so I finally decided it was alright to let myself get some pizza. At the moment I'm trying to add fuzz, more fuzz to this. This is obviously, this is the brightest spot of the painting, and I really want it to just explode with light. That means soft edge, not hard edge. Some young painters don't understand that. If you want something to look like it's bright, just glistering with light, sunlight, do a very soft edge. The softer the edge, the more it seems to be bright, the brighter it seems to be. Now, let's expand. There's also a lot of bright stuff happening down here. Sidewalk. The light is coming in. This morning it was coming in from the sun rose in the east this morning. I don't know if you noticed that or not. This was one of those mornings where the sun came up in the east. Which is to my right as I look at this scene. So this shaft of light, I don't know if you were here when the shaft of light at one time continued all the way to the corner of the painting, and then I decided to experiment that was violating a rule of composition. So I experimented and did a colored dark glaze down here and cut off that streak of sunlight, and lo and behold, as they say, the painting composition instantly became more cohesive. So Yahoo for experiments. And this is one of those paintings where I felt like including a lot of the texture of the city, if that makes sense to you. So I'm including things like a trash basket barrel and a mailbox, no left turn, no parking signs, things like that. Sometimes I include those kinds of things, those textural kind of things, and sometimes I don't. There's no right or wrong answer. Every painting's different. I'm going to put some color on these figures I'm painting right now, especially these two right here, because they're so close to the focal point of the thing. They're right in the middle of things here. But color is not as important on them as the value. So the light that I'm putting around them right now is more important than the color that I'll add in a little while. Yeah, that's all right. Let me continue. I'm running out of white paint here on my palette. Let's continue up this wall. White. I don't know, not much to say. Isn't it nice change? That's really good. I'm a little irritated because there was a time when I thought I might finish this painting by 1 o'clock. I told my wife as much. I told her I was aiming for 1 o'clock, and here it is 1:30, and I'm still not finished. So. But okay, get my soul relaxed. It's much more important to do a good painting than it is to finish, quote unquote, on schedule. Right? Much more important to do a good painting. So let's not get all antsy and jittery inside, but paint with dispatch. Paint with, you know, as much speed as is appropriate. I can use that kind of terminology. And adding fuzz. This orange, bit of orange right there is not actually literal to the scene, but I like it so much that I'm going to keep it, fight to keep it there. I'm going to paint it. Paint around it simply because I like it. One of the things I did when you weren't looking a little while ago is I mixed up some more dark transparent stuff with small brushes, fairly small, and added more branches up here, which I was very happy with the result. And in reality, these branches do not come down this far. They are there, but they're up higher on that building. So once again, I'm cheating the literal image in favor of whoa, big wind. If that wind continues or picks up, I'm going to run and get my car battery, automotive battery that is in my car. Not in the engine of my car, sitting in the back. I should probably go and do that right now before. So I've got a reasonably large canvas, not huge, and I've got a pretty big umbrella on top of it, so it's quite the sail I've got set up here. And the day has been very pleasant. Thank you. The day has been very pleasant, but I've had now very little trouble with wind. Let's keep it that way. Okay, I feel like the painting is coming alive a little bit better now that I've got that taken care of. I'm going to do similar over here. Not quite that bright. And if you haven't heard me say so before, let me quickly say now that I'm applying this titanium white with a little bit of yellow ochre in it. I'm applying it fairly thickly. I'm assuming you can see that, you can discern that. And to that end, it's important for you to know that I buy only, well, no, I have a tube of regular titanium. But anyway, I buy titanium Alkyd titanium. Alkyd is oil paint. It's simply fast dry oil paint. Because if I wasn't using Alkyd, these thick bits that I'm putting on here right now could easily take a week to dry. And if I get much thicker than this, it can easily take 2 months to dry. And I don't know about you, but I'm trying to make a living as an artist. I do not have time to wait for a painting to dry for 2 months. And especially, of course, here I am at a Plein Air festival. I'm turning these paintings in day after tomorrow. So it's a good tip for those of you who perhaps don't know that one yet. Buy Alkyd, titanium white Alkyd. It's simply a fast dry oil. You could add, of course, liquid to your titanium and make it dry fast. The problem is that transparent makes your titanium more transparent, right? And I do not want transparent titanium. I joke often. There actually is I forget which one. There actually is acrylic paint manufacturer, I forget which one, that sells a tube of transparent white. I always laugh. Yeah, listen to me, I'm laughing. Like I say, I always laugh. Transparent white. If you buy a tube of transparent white, tell me what should be in the tube. Right. Air. There should be nothing. Maybe water. There should be nothing in the tube. Transparent white is an oxymoron. And I know what they mean. I know what they mean by it, but it's still silly, and it dismays me a little bit that artists and art students can get sucked in by their silly marketing. What they mean is a translucent white, of course. But even so, what a waste of money. Do not buy translucent white paint. It's a waste of money. Buy white paint and add your own medium to it if you want it translucent. Or buy it more thinly if you want. Anyway, I'm sure somewhere there's some fantastic artist painter somewhere that just swears by transparent white. So there you go. But I think it's nuts. By definition, it is nuts. Transparent means glass. Transparent white glass, what color is it? Color glass. Otherwise it's not transparent. Okay, the wind is not blowing right now. My car is pretty close by. If you don't mind, I'm going to keep broadcasting. Back. All that grunting and groaning was me carrying a 7-pound battery. My easel's a little bit more down. Okay, wipe off these brushes. Okay, I really should be having a very short list. I do have a very short list of things that still need to be done. One is color on the people's clothing, and a little bit of green, blue in the sky. Let's see what I want to do next. I'm not sure. Get up a couple of different brushes. Let's do this blue in the sky. It's irritating me that it's not nailed down yet, even though there's just a tiny bit of sky, and I don't want to draw too much attention to it, but I do want it to look like sky. And at the moment it's just a little too muddy blue. It's very close to the corners though, so are you with me? You have to be careful, but yeah, just brighten it up a little bit. Punch in here. I feel like even though it's a tiny bit, I feel like it's kind of important to the composition, because if we didn't have this here, then the whole canvas would be just a wall of walls, a wall of building, right? So I feel like psychologically this little bit of daylight back here is kind of important. Yeah, and I like that already better. And do a little bit more. That's probably enough, but since I've got that there, I feel like I can do some more slightly prettier blue in these windows for the same reason, to give the feeling of daylight, give the feeling so that the painting, the whole canvas is not just this impenetrable wall of walls. Same thing, a little bit of reflection in the windows. Yeah, I like that. Now, not quite that bright. I'm thinking very often when you paint asphalt, the color of the asphalt should be related to the color of the sky, because it's usually, of course, a neutral gray and slightly glossy. You know, an old pavement is kind of shiny. That's why it causes accidents in the south when it rains. I don't know if you northerners know that or not. Because up north, I grew up in Michigan, where it rains. It's one of the rainiest states in the Union. And so our roads are getting washed off all the time. I had no idea until I moved south many years ago. And then in the south, where you don't get as much rain, a hot summer, when it finally does rain, the roads become quite slippery because the water is lifting up the rubber that's on the asphalt from all the tires going over it. I don't know if you find that interesting or not, but I did, and it was a really good thing to learn. Why are Southerners always having accidents when it rains? Well, that's why. Up north, it doesn't happen that way at all. There, little travelogue for your pleasure there. What it's like to live in different parts of the country, in different parts of the world, different climates. I'm always inclined to judge the other guy, no matter who the other guy is slightly dumb. Oh, come on, I'm not the only one who does that. It's a temptation, a tendency I'm trying to get over. Yeah, I'm stumbling. Yes, sir. I've done this before. No, exactly. Smart guy saying, "Is that your first day, is it?" A little bit more side of the canvas here. A little bit. Okay, so while I've got some medium dull blue on my brushes, let's do blue jeans. Of course, are just ubiquitous in America, and I think maybe all over the civilized world, I don't know. So putting some blue on the bottom half of a person is pretty safe, pretty standard. And I'm going to do the same thing to this guy right here, and I'm calling this one here a guy, and my girl over here. Oh, this is two women. That's interesting. I didn't realize I was two women until right that second. How do I know it's a woman? I'm just at this distance, just a guess, just a hunch. Because it's skinny down there, and that looks like one leg, so it looks like a skirt, and this is skinny there and there, so it looks like, and she's shorter, so it looks like, I get, the only reason I'm even commenting on that is just most typically when I'm painting people in paintings, I tend to group them, male and female together. Now I'm trying to mix up a dull red. Because I think even though this woman way over here is kind of far away from the center, she's the one that asks to be in red today. kind of a crazy tradition, but I find that it works. I do a lady in red, not for any reason, I don't think, other than psychological. I'm going to make two in red today. Other than a psychological focal point. Not making any kind of comment at all. It's just works. I just find that it works. You put a lady in red, and typically a red dress, and people don't get stuck on it. They notice it. And it doesn't violate our, a sense of oughtness in the world. You remember, of course, that when you're doing a painting, it's not a photograph. When you're doing a painting, you are painting fiction as opposed to nonfiction. A photographer, on the other hand, is photographing nonfiction. I'm using literary terminology to make this point. And it matters as a painter. Let me first of all describe, I'm deciding this lady's strap, purse, bag strap, should come off that shirt. There we go. It matters as a painter. When you're doing a painting, you are not telling people what is possible. You're telling people what is probable. Conversely, when you are taking photographs, you are showing people what is possible, whether it's probable or not. Okay, so do you see the difference between fiction and nonfiction? Nonfiction is a true story, history, what actually happened. And when you're telling nonfiction, you're telling what actually happened, no matter how audacious, bodacious, extraordinary, crazy, rare it is. For instance, let me think of just a crazy historical example. HMS Endurance, the ship Endurance. What's his name? The explorer went to the Antarctic in 1912, 13. Shackelford sailed to with I think 23 men, something like that. Ship got caught in the ice. The ice destroyed the ship, literally broke it into splinters, and the men set out in little boats and over land and sea to try to save themselves. The miracle is that when you read this, it's a fantastic story. It's also a good movie, but the book is even better than the movie, as is usually the case, of course. Hang on just a second. I'm going to dress this guy in a blue shirt. And he's got blue jeans. I'm going to dress him in a lighter colored blue shirt. Anyway, the non-fiction story is that all 23 people survived. It's incredible that they all survived. Not one died. Several lost fingers and toes, body parts from frostbite, but nobody died. Okay. Now, if you were a fiction writer writing a story that you're making up, you would almost certainly have to make half of them die, most of them die, all of them die but once. Because if you didn't, your reading public would go, oh, good grief, this guy writes syrupy, sentimental, tripe. That's ridiculous in that setting. Everybody could die. You understand? So when somebody writes fiction, they have to write what is believable, what is likely to happen. Otherwise, the reading public will go, that's stupid. And when I say likely, I mean likely within the world that they create. That doesn't mean you can't have fantasy or science fiction. You can. But once you've established the world, the universe your story takes place in, then your story has to be believable in that world. There's a reason I'm saying all this. Bear with me. So when you write fiction, it has to be believable. When you write nonfiction, like a news story, no matter how ridiculous it is, like Shackleton, Everybody Survived, you're telling the truth. So you don't have to apologize. You just tell what's up. Okay, painting. When it comes to painting, you are not writing nonfiction. You're writing fiction. Therefore, the artist must paint what is believable, not what is possible. That's a confused artist, and very often very adolescent artist. Let me give you another example. Compared to photography, when I go out in the field, when I'm out somewhere like I am this weekend, painting, and I'm taking photographs to paint from, my mind very consciously toggles back and forth between pictures that are good photographs, which I do take. I'm not bragging that they're good. What I mean is I take pictures just because it's a good photograph. But most of the pictures, if it's a good photograph, it's not a good painting, and kind of vice versa. For instance, if I'm at a shipyard this afternoon, where the place where they're repairing ships, boats, not ships. There certainly are ships, but anyway, I'm not going to go that far. And I see, I come up close to the hull of an old boat that's up on stilts to be repaired, and I look at the hull. You can imagine this, and it's covered with barnacles and rust and chipped off paint, and it is the most gorgeous texture and patina. You know, the artist inside me goes, whoa, that is beautiful. So I take a picture of it simply because it's so beautiful. Are you with me? Following me? That's legal. I'm allowed to take a picture of that because what I'm taking a picture of is possible. It is possible for the effect of nature on the hull of an old boat to create this incredible patina, this incredible. It's very possible for that to happen. But if I want to do a painting of a close-up of that hull is very ineffective. It doesn't, because the viewer can say, that's ridiculous. I don't know if I'm communicating very well, but okay, now let's talk about people. Let's get to the point of all this. Fiction versus nonfiction. When you're painting figures in a painting, not photographing, painting. You're painting figures. You are not telling what's possible. You are telling the world, your viewer, what is likely. Okay? For that reason, when you're painting figures in a painting, I believe, as you can tell, I believe this pretty strongly, it is your job to paint not real people, not the way people actually look, not the way the average American actually looks, but your goal is to paint ideal people. In other words, and yes, I've actually had some body image, I don't know what to call them, activists, challenge me in the past about, you painted that woman too skinny. It's people like you that are afflicting blah 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 on human beings and making girls feel inadequate about their bodies. Actually, she didn't go on to that extent, but that's what she was saying. And I shrugged and said, person's an idiot. It's not my job to paint chubby Americans. It's if you paint chubby, unless you're making a point. If you're making a point, then you're not doing art, you're making points, right? Now, okay, if you're painting a nursing home, and everybody at a nursing home is all stove up, as they used to say in Texas. You got arthritis and everything. So then you can paint chubby people leaning over, walking with stiff legs, because you're trying to convey the feeling of a nursing home and old people, right? But if you're just painting people like this, you don't make them chubby, even though in America, everybody's chubby. You with me? That's what I was getting to. You're not painting nonfiction, you're painting fiction. You don't paint what's possible, you paint what's likely. And when it comes to human figures, you don't paint what's possible, you paint the ideal. These are just symbols for human beings. In fact, if you make a person chubby or give him or her red hair, a very natural question for your audience is to ask is, who's that? Again, if you're painting like this, if you're painting a scenic painting with people in it, it's not supposed to be anybody, right? It's not a who's that. I don't care who this is. They're just people. They're just people in my scene. Okay, well, I've ranted and raved long enough about that. I hope that you got the point, because I would hate to think that all that ranting and raving was for nothing. Okay. So again, the point is, when you paint people, you paint idealized people. Slightly taller, slightly skinnier. I'm not that tall. You know what I mean? And again, you paint them 8 heads high. Even though most human beings are 7, I'm 7 on a good day. No, I am not. I'm not a professional model, so I am not 8.5 heads tall. I'm very ordinary shape, so I don't paint people shaped like me in my paintings. I'm not the ideal. I paint people 8 heads tall, 8.5, 9 heads tall. Okay, I keep saying I'm going to stop this rant, and I keep going. So now I'm stopping. I hope somebody out there needed to do that. I know a lot of people needed to. I hope somebody who needed to actually will hear it. I'm very close to done. I need to probably stop talking and think about what I'm doing. I'm going to add some green leaves. Not very many, just a few. I've already got haze of green up here. And by the way, I'm here on a spring day in Norfolk, and the leaves are about 1/3 of the way to full bloom, I guess I would say. Less than half. So I'm painting what I see. I like this time of year, where the leaves are just barely out. So I'm going to do a few leaves just to get the impression. And I think these few leaves could be pretty bright. I'll zoom up here just for a minute so you can see what I'm doing. Oh, I just remembered one other thing I need to do before I'm done with this painting, and that is there are 3 big green poles, lamppost, street light, 3 big poles in this painting, and they're all the same color green, and I want to have sunlight in them. Right now they're all like the same dark green color. So again, just a little bit of green leaves out here, not much at all, and very pale green, very spring green color. Again, partly just adding to the illusion that these trees are, that these buildings are rather enshrouded, surrounded by, supported by these trees, which in fact they are, of course. There's the trees on my head, get it? That's what I'm that impression of just a little bit. And I'm going to stop there for now. I'm going to do the green now on these light posts. It's a very dull green, not that what I just did, not blue at all. It's like some medium, not a lot of chroma, but fairly light, quite a bit of white. So it looks like that color with sunlight on it. And this is the closest light post when it posted. I've already got some sunlight on it, but let's finish the job real quick. Oh, and I have to do a little bit of red on these 2 signs here. Sorry, I keep discovering things I haven't done yet. Let's do this light post. And of course, when I look at my subject matter now, when I look at the scene off to my left, none of the and I need to do blue on this mailbox and blue on this street sign. I keep coming up with new things, and just a little bit of green on this lamppost, which is half of it's in shade, so there we go. Oh, and just here I am. Here you go. This is what it's like to paint. I keep thinking, oh, I'm almost done. Oh, and then, oh man, no, I'm not either. I'm going to do a little bit of green. I mentioned this earlier. I'm going to do some green right here. Probably one stroke should take care of it. But don't do one solid stroke. That's boring. Then a little bit. And since I did it, I'm going to mix up a lighter color. Are you with me? You got that principle right? A little bit lighter color now, and come in and hit it just here and there. There we go. Same thing with the lamppost. It's a very, very bad form to have the same color stroke all the way down the lamppost. Now the street signs. I'm going to clean these brushes. I'm in a great big hurry, so I'm being sloppy and just rinsing them out way too much. And now, blue. What color blue? Actually tending toward a phthalo blue. How about that? It's a surprise to me with the mailbox. It's more phthalo than ultramarine, but it definitely is. So let's go with it. So, mixing up sort of a dull phthalo blue, and this part is round. It should give you that single stroke. Close enough. And down here, all this is blue. Now let's mix up a lighter version of that, especially to go along the top here, where the sun is reflecting off it. Okay, I could probably leave the other half of that mailbox exactly the color it is, but I'm going to add a little bit of definition to it. That's just a little definition. There we go, that's done. Again, now this trash receptacle right here just needs a little defining. Normally you wouldn't define a trash receptacle that carefully, but this is so close to the focal point that it really does need. Okay, I think I'm done with that. A little bit of flesh tone here and there. I've already done some flesh tones, but it's all too uniform, monochromatic. So, it's 2 o'clock, and I'm almost finished. You can tell I'm just chomping at the bit. Of course, I reserve the right to finish these tomorrow or the next day, as I see necessary. I'm sure I will. If I get the chance, in fact, I'll do a glaze on top of all of this work. Here he is holding his phone. A bit of flesh tone there. I really want to make it look like something I would make a light on his screen. I'm not sure I want to go. I'm not sure. I'll think about that. I might do it. I'm not clear. Flesh tone over here. Very happy with that figure right there. Yeah, that's better. A little bit of drawing. Okay, I'm calling that done. Not quite done, but I'm close enough. 99% done. It's always good to finish before you think you're finished. Oh, red, I know. That's right. Red on the no parking and the no left turn signs. This might be just be the last thing that I do. By the way, I'm kind of tickled with the way those 2 signs turned out. Until now, there is everything on those signs is underpainted. So none of it is overpainted until now. The red that I'm adding right now is going to give you just that. Good enough. And then down here, that's the circle around the T is red, and the line going through the middle, and that is red. As soon as I've got this bright red, can I do a tiny bit on this woman? I think I can. quit. I can call it done. Thanks for watching, you guys. Hope you enjoyed that. I hope it's a good painting. I'll look at it tomorrow with fresh eyes. I'll be doing broadcasting more.